Chapter 1138. Genius Remembering Love in 1 Second Divided by Small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The heaven-breaking emperor smacked his lips and said, 4,000 years ago, there was an ordinary genius who found a piece of the Kanglan tree by chance, which allowed him to alter his destiny and become a martial monarch. Although he was killed by the South Heaven sacred ground in the end, it also proved that the piece of the Kanglan tree still exists. I see. Does that mean I'll have to look for it in the half-god region? Qin Nan's eyes flickered faintly. That's right, but whether you can find it or not will depend on your capabilities. Besides, you have to be careful at all times. Once you find the piece of the Kanglan tree, you have to be careful of the people from the South Heaven Gate and the South Heaven Sacred Ground. They will kill you without hesitation if they find out. The heaven-breaking emperor warned, before he added as a sudden thought crossed his mind, the Kanglan tree is extremely extraordinary. If you can find it and merge it with the 9 martial trees, you might be able to bring about some new changes to them. The heaven-shattering martial monarch became excited upon hearing this. 9 martial trees that had surpassed the rules of cultivation, together with the Kanglan tree. What kind of martial tree would it be when they merged into one? His blood began to boil just the thought of it. It might bring about some new changes? Qin Nan's heart shuddered, before his face was filled with determination. It seemed like the piece of the Kanglan tree was the most suitable for him, thus he had to find it. As for the threat from the South Heaven Gate and the South Heaven Sacred Ground, Qin Nan did not need to worry too much about it, as they were now mortal enemies. Kid, wait for me, I'll prepare a little thing for you. After all, you've never seen the Kanglan tree before. With the little thing, it will remind you when you stumble into a piece of the Kanglan tree, so you won't miss it. The heaven-shattering martial monarch rubbed his chin and said, Thanks, Senior. Qin Nan's heart was filled with warmth as he brought his fists together. This time, not only did the heaven-breaking emperor help him solve the biggest problem in his heart, he even helped him take care of the details. If you want to thank me, why don't you call me Master? The heaven-breaking emperor immediately winked at him. Qin Nan was speechless. Although the heaven-breaking emperor had helped him a lot, Qin Nan still couldn't bring himself to call him that. That was because in Qin Nan's eyes, he only had one master in his life, and that was the sacred Lord Blue Dragon. Forget it, it's boring. It's not as cute as these demonic beasts. Heaven-breaking emperor curled his lips, then turned around and walked towards the ancient house. He was going to forge the treasure for Qin Nan. Wait, Senior, I suddenly thought of something. Qin Nan's eyes flickered with great curiosity. Didn't you mention that the treasure you left is the way to shatter the South Heaven Gate? Can I take a look at it? Everyone in the continent knew about the South Heaven Gate. Shattering it was harder than ascending the heavens. Therefore, Qin Nan was quite interested in the method. You want to take a look? Stop dreaming, I'll show it to you when you've become my Emperor Wu. Heaven-breaking Emperor glanced at Qin Nan and said, Don't blame me, I've set the standard for you to reach the martial god realm. Only the martial god realm? Qin Nan was even more intrigued upon hearing this. He purposely blurted out as a thought crossed his mind, Senior, don't tell me you're bluffing? I don't think there's any way to shatter the South Heaven Gate. You're just trying to trick me. Don't try to trick me. Why would I care if you're trying to provoke me? Heaven-breaking Emperor let out a hollow laugh. However, within 3 breaths' time, he clenched his teeth and said, Fine, at least you're smart. I hate it when people try to provoke me. I'll show you what I've learned today. Come with me. Saying this, the heaven-shattering martial monarch headed straight for the ancient residence in a menacing manner. Qin Nan was overjoyed. He immediately followed behind him. Kid, open your eyes and take a good look. Heaven-breaking Emperor stopped in his tracks and flung his sleeves, unleashing an invisible force that opened the door of the ancient residence. Roar. A terrifying roar could be heard. The entire small space was shaken by this roar and began to shake violently. Qin Nan could only see a giant boulder at the end of the residence. On the boulder were several enormous creatures that were entangled with one another, forming a sharp glow. Bang! Before Qin Nan could take a closer look, he could feel himself being immersed in boundless darkness. Within the darkness, a blinding glow was approaching him. He was like a speck of dust or an ant facing the glow. But heaven-breaking Emperor flung his sleeves, causing the door of the ancient residence to close immediately. The shocking rare phenomenon dissipated as well. He turned around and glanced at Qin Nan, whose face was slightly pale and whose eyes were blank. He said with a smug look, "What do you think? Isn't it impressive? It's the weapon that I've spent 500 years to come up with." "A weapon? What kind of weapon is that?" Qin Nan collected his thoughts slightly, but he could still remember the feeling he had a moment ago. How terrifying! That aura was absolutely terrifying. Until now, Qin Nan had never seen such a terrifying aura. Even the aura of the Dragon Emperor in the past was not even 1/10,000th of that aura. No, what you saw wasn't a weapon. The heaven-shattering martial monarch placed his hands behind him and said with a prideful smile, "What you saw was only a drawing of the weapon." The words served as a shocking thunder. Chapter 1139. A Genius Will Remember Love in a Second Divided by Small? Sagnet, providing you with interesting novels to read. A few breaths later, following a whoosh, Qin Nan's figure appeared at the bottom of the cliff. Love Go Small Sag W Chu. Unlike last time, the people of the Wuji Alliance, the white-robed swordsman Wu Chen, and the demon-eyed waterman were not here. A storage bag? Qin Nan was startled. He picked up a storage bag from the ground and scanned it with his divine sense. There were 500,000 monarch crystals inside it. Apart from that, there was also a scroll covered in words, which basically said things like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Qin Nan, I was blind, I'm really sorry," and so on. Qin Nan immediately came to a realization. It seemed like the storage bag was left behind by the people of the Wuji Alliance. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had long forgotten about the limitless Divine Alliance's matters. However, little did Qin Nan know, when the swordsman Wu Chen and the demon-eyed waterman warned the disciples of the Wuji Alliance, they were completely dumbfounded. They never thought Qin Nan would be so terrifying, to the point where even Shi Qinfan and the others were no match against him. After thinking it over and piecing it together, he managed to get this storage pouch. They did not dare to hand it over to Qin Nan in person, as they were afraid that Qin Nan would kill them all in a fit of rage. Qin Nan put the storage bag away. He was not in a rush to leave, as he began to organize his thoughts. His martial monarch path was extremely clear. He would head to the half-god region to find the pieces of the Kanglan tree and merge the 9 martial monarch. However, it was not the right time yet, as the martial monarch ascending ceremony of Tang Qingshan, Ao Tsangtian, and the others was about to take place. I should take part in the martial monarch ascending ceremony. I still have some time left. Why don't I return to the Dragon Emperor Court and cultivate in seclusion at the 10,000 Beast Garden and improve my martial ancestor martial tree? Qin Nan pondered for a moment and made up his mind. Currently, his 9 martial trees had yet to reach the peak of the martial ancestor's level, thus he still needed time to cultivate them. After all, it would be extremely dangerous in the half-god region. Furthermore, only when the martial ancestor trees had reached their peak and merged into one would he be able to inherit the monarch horoscope. Several hours later, Qin Nan passed through Middle Street City and returned to the Dragon Emperor Court. As soon as he came back, Qin Nan was attracted by the scene in front of him. Several enormous creatures were flying in the sky, holding some kind of ancient hammer in their hands. They seemed to be forging something in the air. Not only that, but there were also Yao disciples in their true forms all over the Dragon Emperor Court. They were remodeling the mountain peak. Greetings, Senior Brother Qin Nan. A monster race disciple hurriedly greeted respectfully when he saw Qin Nan. Well, what's going on now? Qin Nan asked. Senior Brother Qin Nan, you still don't know? The monster race disciple was startled before he blurted out, the touring dojo is undergoing some changes. According to our experience, Senior Brother Ao Tsangtian and the others will successfully inherit the monarch horoscope in 10 days. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor Court is currently remodeling the place. I see. Qin Nan nodded and returned to the human peak. He took out a badge and transmitted a message to the nine-tailed monarch beast. Why are you suddenly thinking of cultivating at the 10,000 beast garden? Following a pleasant scent, the nine-tailed monarch beast's figure appeared before Qin Nan. Isn't there still 10 days until the ceremony? I'm planning to improve my cultivation within these 10 days. Qin Nan replied. The nine-tailed monarch beast rolled her eyes and said, if that's the case, there's actually a better place called the Dragon Bone Cliff. It's one of the forbidden areas of the Dragon Emperor Court. Even the core disciples are not allowed to go there. It's perfect for the cultivation of the human race. It's not impossible for you to go there, but you have to tell me. The nine-tailed monarch beast's eyes flickered as she said, why are the geniuses on the monarch ranking so intimidated by you? Even though Qin Nan had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, causing the god beast to be disappointed in him, the Dragon Emperor, the nine-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast soon learned something unbelievable. The geniuses of the 2-starred and 3-starred factions who were taking part in the monarch horoscope contest warned the elders and disciples not to offend Qin Nan at all costs. That was all the geniuses said. They did not say anything else. The 3 monarch beasts were even more curious. What exactly had Qin Nan done to make the geniuses so intimidated? I don't know either. Qin Nan shook his head. Humph, forget it. The nine-tailed monarch beast snapped. I'll send you to the Dragon Bone Cliff now. She waved her hand and unleashed a magical force that encapsulated Qin Nan's figure, causing him to vanish into thin air. However, to Qin Nan, the 3 monarch beasts, the entire Dragon Emperor clan, and the people of the Middle Continent did not expect a shocking event to take place during the monarch ascending ceremony, which resulted in a great uproar that shook the entire continent. Chapter 1140. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? Sagnet, providing you with interesting novels to read. His strength had improved by a whole level. That being said, the reason why he was able to improve so quickly was because Qin Nan had tried to inherit the monarch horoscopes twice in a row during the monarch horoscope contest. Even though he had failed both times, his flesh, bones, etc., still had a hint of power left in his flesh and bone. Qin Nan was not in a rush to come out from seclusion. He spent some time comprehending his strength before absorbing the qi. Time gradually passed. Another 5 days were gone in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, at the touring dojo of the Middle Continent, buzz. Suddenly, an ancient, leisurely, and mysterious voice resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it caused the spirits of the cultivators that stood on guard a few tens of thousands of kilometers away to be refreshed. Their entire bodies felt as if they were being cleansed by an invisible force. The voice was none other than the voice of Tao. Quick, report to the sect. Tang Qingshan and his crew are about to come out from seclusion. The cultivators quickly collected their thoughts and took out their badges to transmit their thoughts. Not long after, the news was spread across the entire Middle Continent like a storm with the help of the Shadow Pagoda. Sorceress Qian, Ao Tsangtian, Tang Qingshan is coming out from seclusion? TSK, it seems like it's true. I heard that many factions have already made their way to the Dragon Emperor Court to prepare for the monarch ascending ceremony. The monarch ascending ceremony, is there any way to enter? The cultivators blurted out. The reason being that since ancient times, the Middle Continent would always hold a monarch ascending ceremony after the monarch horoscope contest. As time passed, it had become a habit, a tradition, which attracted the attention of many people in the Middle Continent. Meanwhile, at the Dragon Emperor court, as soon as they received the news, the atmosphere of the Dragon Emperor court changed instantly. 58 mountains fired giant light pillars with different colors into the giant black dojo floating in the air. At that instant, the black dojo emitted a golden glow that spread rapidly into the surroundings. Love go little say ku in less than a breath's time. A giant altar made of light over 9,000 zhang long floated in the sky. The altar was surrounded by rays of light. At the front of the altar were several thrones made of battle dragons. All disciples of the Dragon Emperor court, listen up. The coronation ceremony officially begins. An imperious roar echoed in the sky. It was none other than the Dragon Emperor. Whoosh! Whoosh! Powerful auras penetrated the rift as the disciples of the beast tribes from the 58 mountains made their way to the entrance of the Dragon Emperor clan and lined up in a huge formation. Meanwhile, the elders of the mountains floated in the air, waiting for the battle to begin. Ha ha! I can't remember how many years it's been since I came to the Dragon Emperor court. A burst of laughter could be heard coming from the front, as the extraordinary saber monarch arrived with a smile on his face. His figure emitted a strong monarch aura. Behind him were Dao Qianzhong, the elders, Wen Wu, the core disciples, Fei Lingyu, and the rest of the inner disciples. From afar, it felt like a sharp saber was about to slash the Dragon Emperor court in half. Almost half of the people of the Heaven Saber sect were here for the monarch ascending ceremony. TSK, extraordinary, you're still as straightforward as ever. Aren't you afraid that the Heaven Saber sect will be eliminated? A strange laugh could be heard coming from the back. In the next instant, a strong demonic aura surged forward, shrouding a huge area of darkness. The person laughing was an old man wearing a black golden robe. His hair was thinly spread, and his eyes were bloodshot. Despite his shriveled appearance, the monarch aura he was emitting was quite intimidating. The old man was none other than the current patriarch of the Fallen Demon Villa, the Fallen Demon Monarch. Behind the Fallen Demon Monarch was a group of elders, core disciples and inner disciples, similar to the Heaven Saber sect. They gathered together and unleashed a shocking demonic aura like a peerless demon god, whose aura was on par with the Heaven Saber sect's. Amitba, old devil, look at your token. Just now, several of our Vajras have already gone to attack your sect. Following a Buddhist chant, an old man with a benevolent look slowly walked over. Ha ha ha! Another burst of laughter could be heard. In the next hour, the authorities of the Shadow Pagoda, the Chaos sect, the Heartless sect, the Sword sect, the Wuji Alliance, etc., led their disciples and arrived at the Dragon Emperor court. That being said, apart from the Heaven Saber sect and the Fallen Demon Villa, the rest of the martial monarchs were only clones. Despite that, the Dragon Emperor court was encapsulated in a monarch aura and a monarch glow. In addition to the arrival of the elders and disciples, the Dragon Emperor court was extremely lively, resulting in a great scene. Welcome to the Dragon Emperor court, martial monarchs, elders, and geniuses. In the name of the chief of the Dragon Emperor court, I hereby declare that the monarch ascending ceremony has officially begun. Chapter 1141. A genius will remember love in a second/small? I'm here to provide you with interesting novels to read. Bang! Bang! 2 earth-shattering explosions rang out in the distance. The authorities, elders, and disciples on the altar raised their heads as if they were aware of the explosions. They could only see a huge space collapsing as blinding golden rays were emitted, like 2 golden suns floating in the sky. A magnificent monarch aura swept the surroundings like a storm. 2 figures slowly stepped out from the golden glow with formidable auras, as if they were ancient giants. They were none other than Ao Tsangtian and sorceress Qian Qian. Such a powerful aura! Gasp, their auras are so terrifying after achieving the martial monarch realm. I'm afraid they are no ordinary martial monarchs. That's right, the monarch glow is like the sun, and the monarch aura is like the ocean. They have only just achieved the martial monarch realm, and have yet to overcome the tribulation, but their auras are already so strong. I'm afraid they will achieve the second layer martial monarch realm after overcoming the tribulation. As expected of the top 10 geniuses on the monarch ranking, the oldest martial monarch slowly commented. I'm Ao Tsangtian, greetings, Dragon Emperor, Nine-Tailed Monarch Beast, Diabolic Monarch Beast. Greetings, Senior Extraordinary Saber Monarch, Senior Fallen Demon Monarch, Senior Wuji Monarch. I'm Qian, greetings, Dragon Emperor, Nine-Tailed Monarch Beast, Diabolic Monarch Beast, and Extraordinary Saber Monarch. Greetings. The two stepped forward and brought their fists together. Their voices were loud like claps of thunder, echoing clearly in everyone's ears. The geniuses below were in a daze as their hearts trembled. They used to be on the same level, but the difference between them was so huge that it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Senior Extraordinary Saber Monarch, Cultivator Tang Qingshan, said that he's not interested in taking part in the trial. He has already returned to the sect. Ao Tsangtian wore a smile as he brought his fists together toward the Extraordinary Saber Monarch. This guy, the Extraordinary Saber Monarch, was left speechless. Although the outside world assumed that Tang Qingshan was his disciple, the people of the Heaven Saber sect were well aware that Tang Qingshan was only his junior brother. He had no right to order Tang Qingshan around, not to mention that Tang Qingshan had already achieved the martial monarch realm. It doesn't matter if you didn't come. The two of you can take a seat first. Nine Tails, begin the second ceremony, Dragon Emperor said calmly. Understood. The nine-tailed monarch beast rose from the ground and leapt into the air above the dojo. She scanned her surroundings and said with a charming smile, "The monarch horoscope contest has come to an end. First of all, congratulations to Ao Tsangtian, Sorceress Qian, and Tang Qingshan for successfully achieving the martial monarch realm. Now, let's begin the second ceremony. All the emperors congratulate and confer the title of emperor. TSK, what kind of **T is this? What's the point of having so many complicated processes? Wasn't it just bestowing an imperial title? In my opinion, Ao Tsangtian is Qin Nan's mount. Let's call him the Dragon Emperor of the Azure Sky, Mount of Qin Nan. This sorceress Qian seems to be quite good-looking with a petite figure. Let's call her the Little Demon Monarch." Sima Kong among the crowd wore a perverted grin. However, at that instant, an unexpected occurrence took place. Bang! A shocking explosion took place, as if the heavens and earth had just been struck by a giant hammer. The rift within a few thousand li was shattered into pieces, resulting in strong gusts of wind surging out from the cracks. The geniuses on the dojo were startled. The martial monarchs were startled too. What was going on? Who dared to intrude on the monarch ascending ceremony of the Middle Continent? The South Heaven Sacred Ground has arrived. The Jade Lake Sacred Mountain has arrived. The martial principal sect has arrived. 3 loud and clear voices seemed to have descended from the 9 heavens and landed in the mortal world, exploding in everyone's ears. At that instant, the martial monarchs were startled. The figures of the geniuses stiffened as their faces were filled with astonishment. What was going on? These were the top 3 factions of the half-god region. They had never sent anyone to participate in the monarch ascending ceremony of the Middle Continent. Why were they all here this time? Sima Kong, who was wearing a perverted grin a moment ago, was dumbfounded. Seriously? Did something serious really happen? Could it be that Qin Nan was in danger because of the 3 factions? Chapter 1142. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second/Small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. She is indeed a female disciple of the Jade Lake Sacred Mountain. Even though I can't see her face, I feel that she is very beautiful. Hiss, the three great forces actually came. On the glowing dojo, the disciples and elders of the Middle Continent immediately collected their thoughts and inhaled deeply. The astonishment in their eyes had yet to dissipate, because when they truly saw the people from the three great powers, their hearts were once again shaken. The martial monarchs collected their thoughts and communicated with one another with their divine sense, exchanging countless thoughts with one another. In comparison, the martial monarch realm experts were a lot calmer. After all, anyone who had achieved the martial monarch realm was considered an authority of the Kanglan continent, thus they had the right to remain calm. I didn't expect the three major powers to come to the Dragon Emperor court. Love go little say, Netku the Dragon Emperor stood up, looked ahead, and said, "Nine Tails, quickly invite the guests into the dojo." Yes. The nine-tailed monarch beast waved her hand, causing three blinding glows to be fired from the glowing dojo, which transformed into three great glowing paths that landed below the feet of the people of the three great factions. Her cultivation of the peak martial monarch realm was fully displayed. I was scared to death. Old Gong, what are they doing here? Sima Kong covered his face with his hand, as he had yet to recover from the shock, before he blurted out in a trembling voice as a sudden thought crossed his mind, "Don't tell me that idiot Qin Nan has offended the three great factions, and now they are here to trouble him." The more Sima Kong thought about it, the more likely it seemed. With Qin Nan's bad temper, it was not strange at all that he had offended the three major forces. What are you thinking about? Qin Nan didn't offend the three great powers, and I don't know what the three great powers want to do. But in short, something big is going to happen this time. Gong Yang shook his head and said calmly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the people from the three factions walked onto the path of light and entered the dojo. They all sat on the white jade nine-tailed chairs that were second only to the great emperors. Fellow Taoists, are you here to congratulate Ao Tsangtian and the others in the Dragon Emperor court? The Dragon Emperor said slowly. His eyes stared at the people of the three major forces, emitting an invisible pressure. That's right. I'm also very curious. Fellow cultivators, why have you come to the central continent? The extraordinary Saber Emperor narrowed his eyes. The two martial monarchs spoke simultaneously. Their voices were filled with a hint of doubt. After all, he was in the middle of the Emperor Ascension ceremony, so it was only natural that he would be displeased to be interrupted. Although the three major forces were extremely powerful, it did not mean that as long as one was a member of the three major forces, they could do whatever they wanted. The lively dojo fell silent at that instant. The gazes of the entire crowd turned towards the people from the three great factions. The reason being that they were curious about the three great factions that had never visited the central continent during the Monarch Ascension ceremony. Why were they here all of a sudden? They would not believe it if they were here to congratulate Ao Tsangtian and the others. Dragon Emperor, Extraordinary Saber Monarch, fellow martial monarchs, fellow cultivators of the Middle Continent. An old man wearing a purple golden robe from the South Heaven sacred ground rose to his feet and said with a calm expression, "Firstly, we are here to congratulate Ao Tsangtian, Sorceress Qian Qian, and Tang Qingshan for achieving the martial monarch realm at the same time. These gifts are prepared by the South Heaven sacred ground for you three. These are from the Jade Lake Sacred Mountain. These are from the martial principal sect." The imperious-looking middle-aged woman and the middle-aged man with long hair followed the purple-gold elder's lead and fired 3 storage bags, which turned into 3 rays of light flying toward the Dragon Emperor, the Extraordinary Saber Monarch, and the Fallen Demon Monarch. What's the second reason? The Dragon Emperor's aura showed no sign of weakening. As for the second reason, something serious has happened in the half-god region. We've been ordered by our sect to attend the Monarch Ascension ceremony and announce it to the crowd. The eyes of the old man in the purple golden robe flickered as he raised his tone. Currently, the South Heaven sacred ground, the Jade Lake sacred mountain, and the martial principle sect each have a legendary genius who has surpassed the rules of cultivation. We've come to the middle continent to announce it to the world. As soon as the words were spoken, the entire glowing dojo seemed to be struck by a thunderbolt from the 9 heavens. Chapter 1143. Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second Go? Shua.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The old man in the purple golden robe flicked his finger, firing a black stone at the center of the dojo. It came to a stop as cracks began to appear on its surface. When the stone was completely shattered, a huge ray of light burst out and condensed into a light screen. On the screen was a young man sitting at the peak of a mountain. Due to the distance, it was impossible to see his face clearly. After 3 breaths' time, 8 brilliant crimson glows were emitted from the young man's back all of a sudden, as a magnificent martial spirit emerged from the ground. Even the space above the peak of the mountain was filled with cracks, indicating how powerful the aura was. The 8 crimson glows were 8th grade Tian ranked martial spirits, which were considered top-tier martial spirits in the Kanglan continent. However, that was not all. All of a sudden, the entire screen began to tremble. Another 8 crimson glows were emitted from the young man's back, as another martial spirit floated in the air. That was not the end of it. A third martial spirit appeared, which also had 8 crimson glows. At that instant, a total of 24 crimson glows, each representing a total of 3 martial spirits, stood firmly in the air. The aura they emitted was visible through the screen. At this point, the screen came to a stop and disappeared in the air. The entire dojo fell into a dead silence, as if the heavens and earth were being sucked dry by a powerful force. After a period of 100 breaths' time, the crowd finally collected their thoughts. Even so, the martial monarchs, elders, and geniuses could not hide the astonishment in their eyes. 3 martial spirits. Are you kidding me? That's 3 martial spirits? Are you kidding me? Are there really 3 martial spirits in this world? I'm not dreaming, am I? I'm not dreaming, am I? This is impossible. 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 A series of voices exploded on the dojo. As everyone knew, since ancient times, everyone was born with only one martial spirit. Even if one were to alter their destiny, there would only be one. However, the genius named Xing Jingtian had 3 martial spirits. Furthermore, each of their martial spirits was 8th grade Tian ranked. What did an 8th grade Tian ranked martial spirit mean? Even in the half-god region and the 3 great factions, they were qualified to become core disciples. However, in comparison, Ao Tsangtian, Sorceress Qian Qian, Dao Qianzhong, Celestials, Faceless Hermit, and the rest of the geniuses reacted calmly. After all, they had witnessed Qin Nan's 9 martial trees, and how Qin Nan had inherited 9 monarch horoscopes and almost became the top 1 martial monarch of all times. The elders and disciples of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the martial principle sect sharply noticed that many geniuses and martial monarch realm experts of the Middle Continent were relatively calm after hearing the shocking news. What was going on? Wasn't the fact that each of his 3 martial spirits was 8th grade Tian ranked enough to shock the crowd? Silence. Suddenly, a loud roar exploded on the glowing dojo. A terrifying battle intent burst out from the Dragon Emperor's figure, which swept across the dojo like a raging tide, causing the elders and geniuses to shudder and keep their mouths shut. The rowdy training hall instantly quieted down. I never thought that there would be 3 geniuses who have surpassed the rules of cultivation in this world. However, such a huge news could easily shock the entire Kanglan continent. I don't think it's necessary for everyone to come all the way to the monarch ascending ceremony and tell the world about it, right? The Dragon Emperor slowly uttered each word with an expressionless face. The martial monarchs collected their thoughts and glanced at the people of the three great factions. They would not believe that the three great factions were only here for the monarch ascending ceremony. Senior Dragon Emperor is right. The old man in the purple golden robe nodded and said, "There's a third reason why we're here. Now that the half-god region has a genius who has surpassed the rules of cultivation, they have a better understanding of the rules of cultivation. Therefore, after a discussion, the three great factions have decided to start a new era of cultivation, which is," the old man in the purple golden robe continued, "any genius with a second-grade Tian-ranked martial spirit or above is allowed to head to the half-god region and take part in the trials of the three great factions." Chapter 1144. Geniuses Remembering Love in 1 Second? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. As a matter of fact, most rogue cultivators with second-grade Tian-ranked martial spirits and above would leave the middle continent. Think about it, if they lost the geniuses with second-grade Tian-ranked martial spirits and above, what was the point of their factions existing? It would be meaningless. At that instant, the martial monarchs immediately realized that the three great factions had come to the monarch ascending ceremony to announce the shocking news to the two-starred factions and three-starred factions. Holy crap! Holy crap! That old man was right. This is really the beginning of a new era of martial arts. The three great factions are too ruthless. This move alone is enough to take away most of the geniuses and cultivators of the middle continent. Besides, the two-starred factions of the middle continent will surely decline after losing the geniuses and cultivators. When the time comes, the three great factions will surely interfere with the middle continent and reclaim the middle continent. What the F***k? Sima Kong was utterly speechless. Gong Yang, who was standing beside him, was utterly confused. Judging from the current situation, the three great factions were targeting the two-starred factions and three-starred factions of the middle continent, but it didn't seem like it had anything to do with Qin Nan? Could it be that the mysterious voice that was related to the 9 words martial god was lying to him? How bold! Impudent! How lawless! At that instant, a series of thunderous roars exploded above the dojo. Love Go Little Say, Chew the clones of the martial monarchs from various factions rose to their feet on the dragon battling thrones. Their eyes were cold as their figures unleashed terrifying auras. The atmosphere of the dojo instantly changed, as if a storm was approaching. According to the treaty, the half-god region and the middle continent should mind their own business, and shouldn't interfere with the affairs of the middle continent. But now, why are you doing this? The Dragon Emperor's eyes flickered coldly. Meanwhile, the authorities and factions of the middle continent were all standing on one side. Even though they were always at odds with one another, the three great factions had already offended their roots. No, please calm down. The old man in the purple golden robe said with a calm expression, even though the half-god region and the middle continent have a treaty, it doesn't say that the three factions can't change the criteria of recruiting disciples. It's up to them whether they want to come or not. What a joke. Don't give me that. Why don't you change the rules, and allow anyone with a 10th grade Huang-ranked martial spirit and above to join the three great factions? Doesn't that mean you will control the entire Kanglan continent? The Dragon Emperor's expression did not change in the slightest. Instead, it became even colder. The great emperors behind him did the same. At this moment, the purple-gold-robed elder, the graceful and luxurious middle-aged woman, and the middle-aged man with long hair casually looked at each other and communicated with their divine wills. They had expected this to happen long before they arrived. But now, what should they do? After all, they were only the elders of the three great factions. There was still a huge gap between them and the martial monarchs. If they continued to act recklessly and infuriated the martial monarchs, they would most likely die on the spot. Dragon Emperor, you're still as hot-tempered as ever. At that instant, a slightly hoarse laugh could be heard coming from the rift. Immediately after, an old man with sparse hair and a bent back slowly walked over from the air. He held a walking stick in his hand and had a pair of pitch-black eyes that were as black as ink. Even though the old man was not emitting any aura, the Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs were startled upon seeing him. The others might not recognize him, but they clearly knew who he was. The old man was none other than one of the 10 Emperor Wu, the black-eyed martial monarch. Everyone knew that there was still a difference between geniuses. The same applied to the Emperor Wu. The 10 great martial emperors were the 10 strongest individuals among the great martial emperors. Chapter 1145. Geniuses remember love in 1 second divided by small? I'm here to provide you with interesting novels. However, I know you're not too happy about it, so I've got a suggestion. Not only will it boost your morale and boost your reputation, it will also allow you to vent your anger. The eyes of the black-eyed martial monarch flickered as he spoke. The Dragon Emperor and the others raised their eyebrows. Today is the monarch ascending ceremony for Ao Tsangtian and the others. I remember that the third stage of the ceremony is a duel between the disciples of the various factions. Since the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the Martial Principal Sect have brought quite a number of disciples, why don't we let them compete with the geniuses of the Middle Continent? Of course, the disciples of the 3 factions all possess 6th grade Tian-ranked martial spirits and above. During the duel, they are not allowed to use their martial spirits or trump cards like the martial monarch talismans. On top of that, their cultivations must be suppressed to the same level. Think about it, if the geniuses of the Middle Continent won the duel, wouldn't it boost your morale and boost your reputation, allowing you to vent your anger? The black-eyed martial monarch explained in a calm tone. The eyes of the old man in the purple-golden robe, the middle-aged woman, and the long-haired man flickered. The eyes of the Dragon Emperor and the others flickered coldly upon hearing this. Boost their morale and boost their reputation, allowing them to vent their anger? The elders and geniuses might be clueless, but the Dragon Emperor and the others clearly knew that the martial arts and monarch arts practiced by the geniuses of the half-god region were extraordinary. Even if their martial spirits and cultivations were suppressed, they were still a lot stronger than the geniuses of the Middle Continent. In a duel, the chance of them winning was extremely slim. Most importantly, it was not appropriate for them to reject the duel. Firstly, it was the monarch ascending ceremony for Ao Tsangtian and the others. According to the rules of the ceremony, since the 3 factions were here to congratulate them, they would have to send their disciples to duel with one another. Although they could still find an excuse, secondly, if they did not accept the duel, they would lose their reputation in the Middle Continent. They were already in a disadvantageous position, but their factions were still afraid to accept the duel. What would the elders, disciples, and the rogue cultivators of the Middle Continent think? This was clearly a trap set up by the 3 great factions from the very beginning. Otherwise, why would the 3 great factions bring their disciples to the monarch ascending ceremony? The 3 superpowers simply wanted to make an example out of the Central Plains and suppress the arrogance of the other superpowers in the Central Plains. Everyone, what should we do now? First of all, I have to say that this is a trap set up by the 3 great powers. It would be fine if we win, but if we lose, the consequences will be even more disastrous. Moreover, before the 3 great powers set up the trap, they must have made ample preparations. The Dragon Emperor took a deep breath and transmitted his voice to the martial monarchs. The martial monarchs fell silent for a moment before their eyes flickered with determination. Let's fight. If we win this battle, we'll be announcing to the entire Middle Continent that our disciples are no weaker than the 3 great factions. The extraordinary Saber Monarch calmly said. That's right. If you want to fight, so be it. It doesn't matter if you lose. After all, the three great factions aren't exactly a good place with limited resources. Those who go there will only end up as stepping stones. They will eventually come back. The fallen demon martial monarch said with a chuckle. Who would have thought the three great factions would be so ruthless? We have no choice but to fight. We can lose, but we can't afford to lose our morale. That's right. The martial monarchs expressed their opinions. Apart from a few, most of the martial monarchs supported the idea of a duel. The reason being that this time, the three great factions had come in a menacing manner, setting up traps at every step. They no longer had a way out. Very well, the Dragon Emperor Court, the Heaven Saber Sect, the Fallen Demon Villa, the Wuji Alliance, the Shadow Pagoda, and the rest of the 25 two-starred factions are willing to have a duel with the geniuses of the three great factions. The Dragon Emperor said with an imperious look. But, what's the duel going to be? The black-eyed martial monarch flicked his finger hearing this. He had completed his mission perfectly. As for the old man in the purple golden robe and the others of the three great factions, their eyes flickered with joy upon hearing this. The factions had indeed taken the bait. Their efforts had not been in vain after all. It's very simple. The old man in the purple golden robe withheld his joy and stepped forward. The three great factions will send one person and you will send one person. We'll have 5 duels at the same time. How does that sound? Sure. Chapter 1146. Geniuses Remember Love in 1 Second? I'm here to provide you with interesting novels to read. After all, most of the geniuses were either born in the Middle Continent or somewhere remote. If the three great factions were to look down on Dao Qianzhong and his crew, it was the same as looking down on everyone. Let the duels begin. The black-eyed martial monarch said. Whoosh! The infuriated Dao Qianzhong and his crew instantly unleashed powerful auras as they communicated with each other with their divine sense. They then stepped out of a magical formation and surrounded the 3 disciples of the 3 great factions. The lively crowd immediately quieted down, as the crowd stared at the scene before them. At that instant, a great battle took place. Bang bang bang! A series of explosions took place on the dojo. Countless monarch arts were executed, resulting in a blinding scene. In just less than 1,000 breaths' time, Dao Qianzhong and his crew had unleashed a powerful strength with perfect coordination, forcing the geniuses of the 3 great factions to back off. However, before the crowd could react, the geniuses of the 3 great factions unleashed their terrifying auras and executed their terrifying monarch arts, suppressing Dao Qianzhong and his crew. The tables had turned. In addition to that, although the geniuses of the 3 great factions had suppressed their cultivations, their martial ancestors' strength was a lot stronger than Dao Qianzhong and his crew, thus his comprehension of the monarch arts was immeasurable. As a result, Dao Qianzhong and his crew were constantly being suppressed, leaving them no chance to turn the tables around. The crowd's expression became unpleasant. Time gradually passed, as the battle grew more intense. Finally, after the period it took 3 incense sticks to burn, 2 female disciples of the Jade Lake sacred ground suddenly executed powerful monarch arts to seal off Dao Qianzhong and his crew. Dao Qianzhong and his crew were startled, but before they could react, the martial principal sect disciple unleashed the killing blow that he had been preparing for the period it took 3 incense sticks to burn, causing countless glows to devour their figures. Bang bang bang! It was accompanied by a series of explosions. Dao Qianzhong and his crew were severely injured. Their bodies were covered in blood as they were sent flying and slammed into the ground, unconscious. At that instant, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. Even though the martial monarchs, elders, and geniuses had already prepared themselves, their hearts still clenched tightly, as if an invisible hand was grabbing them tightly, causing them to feel suffocated. He had lost. They had lost. The 5 great geniuses of the Central State had fought against the 3 great geniuses of the 3 great powers, and they had lost miserably. Sigh. I knew it. The geniuses of the three great factions are terrifying indeed. Even Dao Qianzhong and his crew failed to defeat them. That young man has perfectly executed the monarch art. As expected, the geniuses of the half-god region are the strongest even among those of the same level. Countless sighs could be heard on the glowing dojo. Love go little say, many elders and geniuses wore helpless look. Even though they were angry and displeased, they had to admit that this was the gap between them. The three great factions have won the first round. The black-eyed martial monarch glanced at the Dragon Emperor and his crew and said with a calm smile, "Dragon Emperor, the second round will begin. Same as before, you can send your men first." Meanwhile, in the forbidden area of the Dragon Emperor court, the Dragon Bone Cliff. Whoosh! Qin Nan's eyes sprang open as his figure emitted a formidable aura. Crap! I was too immersed in the process. Qin Nan slapped his forehead. During the process, he keenly discovered that the dragon chi of the Dragon Bone Cliff was extremely beneficial to his body, thus he had accidentally immersed himself in the process. If he had not realized it in time, he would most likely still be in the process of cultivating. Qin Nan let out a wry smile as he glimpsed at the message from the nine-tailed monarch beast on his badge. He was doomed. He would not be able to endure the scolding when he left the place. Screw it, I should hurry back. Let's hope the monarch ascending ceremony isn't over yet. Qin Nan mumbled to himself before raising his head and glancing at the sky above the Dragon Bone Cliff. After all, the nine-tailed monarch beast was currently taking part in the monarch ascending ceremony, thus she would not be able to pick him up. As such, he had to rely on himself to return to the Dragon Emperor court. This place seems to be a small space with lots of forbidding auras around it. It seems like I'll have to use the heaven-shattering saber to apologize to the nine-tailed monarch beast and the others. Qin Nan observed for a while before making up his mind. He drew out the heaven-shattering saber and slashed at the sky. Chapter 1147. Genius 1 second. Remember love divided by go divided by little? Here's a great novel for you to read. Among the three great factions, a disciple of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground and two disciples of the Martial Principle sect flew out. Same as before, there were only 3 of them. 3 people again. They are obviously looking down on our middle continent. Even though I understand that the half-god region is a lot stronger than our 3 factions, I still don't feel good about it. The crowd on the glowing dojo wore dark expressions. A love go little say W Chu, the trial begins. The black-eyed martial monarch calmly said. Bang! The battle took place instantly. Mu Fan, Li Yunfei, and the others clearly knew that the 3 geniuses of the half-god region were not easy to deal with. As soon as the battle began, Li Yunfei led his team and charged forward with a strong murderous aura. As for Mu Fan and the other cultivator, they stood on the left and right respectively while preparing their attacks. To their surprise, the 2 disciples of the Martial Principle sect split up and flew toward Mu Fan and Li Yunfei. Meanwhile, the female disciple of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground executed a strange monarch art, which transformed her figure into a mystical palace that encapsulated Li Yunfei and his crew, trapping them within it. Mu Fan and his crew were startled. Following this, the 2 disciples of the Martial Principle sect charged forward at lightning speed, executing a series of monarch arts to defeat the 2 cultivators. In less than 1,000 breaths' time, the 2 cultivators were knocked flying, losing their ability to fight. The female disciple of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground performed a hand seal, causing the palace to explode, knocking Li Yunfei and his crew out of the palace. However, before they could regain their footing, the 2 disciples of the Martial Principle sect attacked them once again. A few thousand breaths later, Li Yunfei and his crew were defeated once again. At that instant, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. Even though the elders and geniuses had prepared themselves for the outcome, they were still shocked when they saw the outcome. Ha ha ha, fellow martial monarchs, I'm sorry, we've won another round. The old man in the purple golden robe burst out laughing as his eyes flickered. Should we continue with the third round? I don't think it's necessary. After all, we've already witnessed the strength of the Middle Continent. That's right. There's no need to continue. Too weak. Aboriginals are aboriginals. How can they compare to us? Hee, I didn't even use my full strength when we fought just now. I'm too weak. I really don't know what the sect is thinking. Why did they recruit these people? Is it a waste of spiritual energy? The disciples of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the Martial Principle sect did not conceal the disdain in their eyes. It was as if, other than them, everyone else present was a bunch of natives, ants, and trash. It was their intention, as they were here to trample on the dignity of the cultivators of the Middle Continent. They wanted to tell the entire Middle Continent, or even the entire Kanglan continent, that only the geniuses of the three great factions were considered true geniuses. Green veins surfaced on the foreheads of the elders and geniuses as they clenched their fists tightly. How arrogant! This group of people was simply too arrogant. He didn't put any of the Central State cultivators in his eyes at all. F***ck. A bunch of bastards. What was he being so arrogant for? F***k him, if Chin Nan was here, he would send 5 of them flying with a single slap. I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. Below the dojo, Sima Kong's face reddened as he was about to rise to his feet. Don't panic, let's wait a little longer. They haven't shown their true fangs yet. Gong Yang took a deep breath and said calmly. He still believed in the mysterious senior. The three great factions would surely target Chin Nan in the end. What they needed to do was to lend Chin Nan a hand. The eyes of the Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs flickered with cold, murderous intent. Everyone, the enemy's strength is too strong. It has completely exceeded our imagination. If that's the case, I have no choice but to send out Jiu and the others. I hope you can send out the geniuses in the top 20 of the monarch ranking too. We must win the battle. The Dragon Emperor transmitted his voice. According to the original plan, Jiu, Ao Tianxia, and the others would be used in the final round, but they had no choice but to do it in advance. However, at that instant, several auras burst out from the dojo's spectator stand. Hee, don't be too full of yourself. Who says there's no one capable in the Middle Continent? A young man with flames beneath his feet and wind stirred up with every step he took as he walked over. The man was none other than the 11th ranked on the monarch ranking, fire cultivator Fong Chongqing. Interesting, allow me to have some fun with you. Me too. 2 more voices appeared, who turned out to be the Celestials and the Faceless Hermit. Chapter 1148. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second/Small? We provide you with wonderful novels to read. That being said, it's time to carry out the plan. I don't believe that it's not enough to force you out. Among the 7 disciples of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, a young man standing at the back murmured with a cold look in his eyes. Battle blood, stick to the plan and have a good fight with these ants of the Middle Continent. The voice was not loud, but it was filled with a magical power, allowing the people of the 3 great factions to hear it clearly. The geniuses of the 3 great factions frowned. They did not know the others, except for 2 people. However, judging from the young man's tone, he seemed to be quite arrogant. Who exactly was he? The old purple-robed man and his crew were startled, before their faces were filled with joy. The 3 of them never would have thought that this lord, who had been silent for so long, would finally give the order. With this senior's help, Wang Zhanxue would not only be able to trample the Middle Continent, he would also be able to crush the geniuses of the Middle Continent until they could no longer raise their head. The old purple-robed man and his crew immediately transmitted their thoughts after being aware of the doubts of the other disciples. The eyes of the geniuses of the three great factions were filled with astonishment and respect. They did not expect this senior to follow the group of disciples of the South Heaven sacred ground and come in person. Acknowledged senior. The bulky man standing in front of the young man had bloodshot eyes, a face covered in scars, and hair standing on end. He wore a ferocious grin, revealing his sharp fangs. With a kick, he sprang forward like a ferocious beast. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the bulky man arrived before Jiu Jiu and her crew. His bloodshot eyes glanced at Jiu Jiu and her crew, before he raised his head and glanced at the dojo, before saying in a shocking tone, "Scum of the Middle Continent, listen up. I, Wang Zhanxue, alone is enough to deal with you scum of the Middle Continent." Hearing this, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. No one had expected this Wang Zhanxue from the South Heaven sacred ground to challenge Jiu Jiu and Fang Chongqing on his own. Too arrogant. A single person dares to challenge us 5 geniuses? What a joke. This Wang Zhanxue doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. When the time comes, it will be too late for regrets. I don't believe it. Even though the genius of the half-god region is strong, how could he possibly stand a chance against the 5 of us? A few breaths later, the elders and geniuses could not help but rise from their seats and yell, "Love go little sake netku." Because of Wang Zhanxue's disdain for the central state, all of them were enraged. The Dragon Emperor and the other emperors didn't look too good either. 1 against the 5 of us. Very well, interesting, very interesting. Jiu Jiu, Yang Qi, Fang Chongqing, Celestials, and Faceless Hermit's eyes flickered with icy murderous intent. Let the battle begin. The black-eyed martial monarch calmly uttered the order, as if the battle had nothing to do with him. Roar! Jiu Jiu and Yang Qi instantly transformed into their true forms. The giant 9-tailed fox and the diabolic Qilin floated in the air, while unleashing strong gusts of wind. 2 beast claws slapped at Wang Zhanxue from both sides. Mere beast claws, what could they possibly do to me? Wang Zhanxue's aura was like a rainbow as he leapt up. 2 shocking rays of bloody light erupted from his body, transforming into 2 gigantic bloody claws. 1 on the left and 1 on the right, colliding with the 2 beast claws, creating a shocking explosion. Celestials. Fang Chongqing uttered a groan and performed a hand seal, causing the heavenly flames to burn fiercely in the air. Celestials immediately understood his intention and spat out a stream of netherworld chi into the heavenly flames. At that instant, the boundless heavenly flames and the netherworld chi merged together, forming a pattern of ice and fire. The aura it emitted was 10 times stronger than before. Crimson blood sword. Wang Zhanxue raised his eyebrows and uttered a roar, causing a bloody mist to burst out from his body, which transformed into a giant blood sword that slashed at the pattern of fire and ice in the air. Bang bang! A series of explosions took place. Even though Wang Zhanxue was knocked back, he still managed to resist the attacks of the 4 geniuses with brute force. Ha ha, a bunch of assholes from the Middle Continent indeed. Even with the 4 of you working together, you could barely stop me. Wang Zhanxue threw his head back and roared with laughter. However, halfway through his laughter, his expression suddenly changed. Whoosh! A figure leapt out from the icy area of the pattern of fire and ice. The sword in his hand emitted a blinding glow. Godly snow sword. Break! Following a roar, a terrifying icy sword intent collided with Wang Zhanxue's chest, sending his figure flying. Chapter 1149. Genius Remembering Love in 1 Second Divided by Small? Sagnet, providing you with interesting novels to read. The elders and disciples on the dojo were startled. What was going on? The cultivators of the Middle Continent are mere trash, mere ants. Even though the 5 of you are cooperating perfectly, that's all there is to it. I'll show you what it means to be a genius on the God ranking. Wang Zhanxue rose from the ground and performed a hand seal, ignoring the wound on his chest. The ancient god of blood's 3 degrees of berserk blood. Bang! 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 A strong aura burst out from Wang Zhanxue's body, each stronger than the previous one, which rose 3 times before it came to a stop. At that instant, his figure emitted a boundless crimson glow, as if he was covered in a layer of armor, as if the god of blood had descended upon the mundane world. This. Fang Chongqing and the others were astounded. They did not expect Wang Zhanxue's strength to skyrocket to such an extent after being struck by the sword. The smiles on the faces of the elders and geniuses on the dojo froze, as their eyes were filled with great astonishment. How was this possible? 5 fingers pinching the heart, seal of the god of blood. Wang Zhanxue made his move. His figure turned into a crimson glow as he charged toward Fang Chongqing and the others. He reached out his hand and spread his fingers. On the tip of each of his fingers, a crimson, mystical figure appeared, opening their mouths and revealing their sharp, crimson fangs. 8 directions Wuji, endless heavenly flames descend from the heavens. Fang Chongqing swiftly reacted and performed a hand seal, summoning streams of heavenly flames to form a wall of heavenly flames encapsulating the heavens and earth to defend themselves. Everyone, this Wang Zhanxue's strength is not to be underestimated. Let's. Fang Chongqing swiftly transmitted his voice. Among the 5, he had the highest martial skill talent, thus he was the most suitable person to command the others to unleash their full potential. However, before he could finish his sentence, a voice rang out. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, the towering heavenly flame wall was shattered into pieces by a bloody claw. Wang Zhanxue's figure leapt out from the heavenly flame wall and clawed at Fang Chongqing's back without mercy. Whoosh! Fang Chongqing's back was instantly torn apart, revealing a huge bloody wound. His figure was sent flying by the remaining force, crashing into the ground not far away. His face rapidly reddened. The remaining power of the blood god was attacking his entire body. Fang Chongqing's eyes were filled with pain and shock. That was the wall of heavenly fire, and he was actually able to break through it? How can a mere heavenly fire block my blood god's dermic seal? Now it's your turn. A terrifying aura burst out from Wang Shuozhan's figure as he stomped his foot on the ground, shattering the crimson glow. It was as if he had transformed into an ancient giant as he threw punches at the crowd from above the 9 heavens. Crap, scatter! Jiu Jiu, Yang Qi, Celestials, and the faceless hermit were startled. Blood God's sword. Wang Shuozhan suddenly opened his mouth and spat out boundless blood-red light. The blood-red light condensed into a terrifying blood-red sword and slashed towards the faceless rogue cultivator. The faceless rogue cultivator felt a chill in his heart. He hastily activated the Snow God sword and erupted with Snow God sword chi to block. A loud bang was heard as the sword intent of the god Snow sword completely blocked the blood sword. To his surprise, the blood sword suddenly shattered into pieces and transformed into ferocious blood demons that lunged at the faceless hermit. Even the Snow God's sword intent had no chance of stopping the blood demons. The faceless hermit could only watch his body being struck by the blood demons. Another piece of trash has been dealt with. It's your turn now, Blood God Tide. Wang Shuozhan let out a long roar. Streams of blood-red light shot out from the pores on his body. In the blink of an eye, the blood-red light transformed into a huge sea of blood that flooded the area. Its aura and power were utterly terrifying. Ancient underworld words. Claw of the 9 tails. Wrath of the Qilin. Celestials, Jiu, and Yang Qi were startled as they immediately executed their move. To their surprise, at that instant, a powerful figure burst out from the ocean of blood and threw a series of punches toward the trio. Before the trio could react in time, they were struck by the punches, causing them to cry out in agony as their figures were sent flying. This Wang Zhanxue had learned the move that Fang Chongqing and the others had executed. A feint, followed by a killing blow. Condense. Wang Xuezhan stepped into the air and performed a hand seal, causing crimson glows to be fired from his body, which transformed into 3 bloody mountains. Before Celestials, Jiu and Yang Qi could react, the mountains suppressed the trio in the air, preventing them from fighting any further. At that instant, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. The faces of the elders and disciples were filled with great astonishment. How was this possible? How was this possible? Fang Chongqing and the others were defeated by Wang Zhanxue. The Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs were dumbfounded. This Wang Zhanxue's true power was sealed off by some powerful object, preventing them from peeking at it. On top of that, Wang Zhanxue also possessed some kind of secret technique that could improve his strength. Humph, a bunch of scum of the middle continent indeed, so weak. Piss off. Wang Zhanxue grinned and suddenly lashed out with a kick, sending Fang Chongqing, Celestials, and Faceless Hermit flying. As for you two, Wang Zhanxue glanced at Jiu and Yang Qi as he approached them. His eyes suddenly emitted a bloody glow. Since you're all scum, you should just stay in this world and live an ignoble life. He performed a hand seal, summoning 2 giant bloody claws. On each claw floated 5 illusionary figures. Clenching his fists, the blood god's seal. How bold! The Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast rose to their feet as they were aware of something. A terrifying monarch aura burst out from their bodies like a vast ocean. However, it was as if Wang Zhanxue had already expected this. His figure emitted a boundless bloody aura as the speed of his 2 bloody claws increased rapidly. Bang! Bang! Following 2 loud collisions, the 2 bloody claws penetrated Jiu and Yang Qi's bodies, leaving 2 bloody holes on their bodies. Not only that, the violent will of the blood god swept through their bodies in an instant, shattering their meridians, dantian, and demon bones. Even the martial progenitor tree was stained with a sinister bloody intent. In such a state, they were half crippled. Chapter 1150. It all happened so quickly that even the Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast could not stop it in time. They could only watch with their eyes wide open. The martial monarchs, elders, and geniuses did not expect Wang Zhanxue to be so ruthless after defeating the 5 cultivators, to leave Jiu and Yang Qi half-crippled. Die! An extremely cold shout seemed to explode above the 9 heavens. The entire dojo suddenly dimmed as a giant dragon claw swung in Qin Nan's direction with a strong purple glow as if it had absorbed all the light. If the attack landed, Wang Zhanxue would surely die. Stop it! Following a roar, a giant skinny hand reached out from the distance and slapped at the dragon claw. Bang! It felt like the entire sky was being torn apart. Following this, a strong gust of wind swept across the dojo, causing the elders and disciples to feel great pain. A battle between martial monarchs was simply shocking, not to mention the fact that 2 of them were peak martial monarchs. Black-eyed? Are you trying to stop me? The Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast approached the black-eyed monarch beast with terrifying auras. It was as if they would immediately attack the black-eyed monarch beast if he were to say the word. Sirs, please calm down. Although Wang Zhanxue has crippled the 2 of them, there was no rule that stated that they couldn't cripple their opponents before the start of the competition. Wang Zhanxue might be ruthless, but it's still within reason. If you insist on attacking, I'm afraid you won't be in the right, and you'll lose the grace of a martial monarch. The black-eyed monarch said in a calm tone. The Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast were not startled by the words, but their murderous intent grew even colder. Not in the right grace of a martial monarch? Their core disciples of the Dragon Emperor court had been half crippled by their opponents in a single duel. How could they possibly be in the right? How could they possibly have the grace of a martial monarch? Wang Zhanxue must die. However, at that instant, a badge in the Dragon Emperor's trio's summer ring emitted a glow as an imperious voice exploded in their minds. Dragon Emperor, nine-tailed beast, diabolic monarch beast, watch it. Black-eyed monarch, you're wrong. We're not in the right in this matter, and for the sake of the bigger picture, you can't do anything. God beast the Dragon Emperor, the nine-tailed demonic monarch, and the diabolic monarch froze. Monarch beast, the monarch beast said, monarch beast. The badge fell into a dead silence after the god beast uttered the last sentence. The expressions of the Dragon Emperor, the nine-tailed monarch beast, and the diabolic monarch beast changed rapidly. In the end, they could only clench their teeth and withhold the murderous intent in their chests. Even if they were furious, they had no choice but to obey the god beast. That's more like it. Everyone, calm down. We'll follow the rules. The black-eyed monarch let out a relieved sigh seeing this. Even though he had benefited greatly from the duel, he still had no intention of starting a war with the Dragon Emperor and his crew. The Dragon Emperor and his crew ignored the black-eyed monarch and stared coldly at Wang Zhanxue for a few breaths' time, before they turned around and focused their attention on Jiu Jiu and Yang Qi. Nine-tailed beast, diabolic monarch beast, go and help them recover. The Dragon Emperor transmitted his voice. The nine-tailed monarch beast and the diabolic monarch beast nodded. They reached out their hands and grabbed Jiu Jiu and Yang Qi, before stepping into the rift and vanishing into thin air. The dojo finally regained its calm at that instant. However, most of the crowd had yet to recover from the shock. As expected of the top two-starred faction of the Middle Continent, the Dragon Emperor court. I've only heard of it before, but I've finally witnessed it with my own eyes. It does indeed have the bearing of the top faction. I'm impressed, very impressed. The purple-gold long-distance runner and the others were full of admiration as they cupped their hands and spoke. However, everyone knew that he was only saying it on purpose. He was actually mocking the Dragon Emperor court. Shameless. Utterly shameless. Asshole. How dare you use such a cruel move in a duel? Wang Zhanxue, I'll kill you. How dare you treat senior sister and senior brother like that? Damn it. This guy is doing it on purpose. We can't forgive him. Never. Several furious voices exploded on the dojo. The voices belonged to the peak leaders, elders, and disciples of the Dragon Emperor court. Even Ao Tsangtian, who had just achieved the martial monarch realm, was trembling in anger. Even though the Dragon Emperor court had its own internal conflicts, it had always been united against outsiders. How could they not be furious when they saw Jiu Jiu and Yang Qi being crippled? If it weren't for the Dragon Emperor's voice, they would have lost control of themselves and charged forward. In comparison, the rest of the people on the dojo, including the martial monarchs of the other factions, were infuriated too, but their anger was nowhere close to the level of the people of the Dragon Emperor court. As for the people of the half-god region, their faces were filled with disdain facing the murderous aura. Not convinced? Come and continue the duel then. Ha! All of a sudden, a maniacal laugh resounded through the clouds. The owner of the voice turned out to be Wang Zhanxue. Many people on the dojo were stunned. The entire Dragon Emperor court was infuriated. The black-eyed martial monarch had just calmed himself down, and this guy still dared to laugh? As expected of the Dragon Emperor court. That's the style of the top faction. Follow the rules. Wang Zhanxue glanced at the crowd and licked his lips. However, that's just how I am. I like to cripple a few pieces of trash. I know the people of the Dragon Emperor court are trying to kill me. If that's the case, why don't you all come and kill me? I'll give you the chance today. Let's not waste any more time. Those below the martial monarch level of the Dragon Emperor Court, come at me 10 at a time. A group battle is fine too. A human wave tactic is fine too. I'll take all of you on. He was challenging the entire Dragon Emperor Court with a single sentence. Meanwhile, deep inside the Dragon Emperor Court at the Dragon Bone Cliff, several terrifying saber intents collided with the rift like godly dragons emerging from the ocean, shattering the formations and forbidding auras. Qin Nan frowned slightly. He didn't know why, but there was an indescribable feeling of displeasure in his heart. Screw it, let's get out of here. Qin Nan's eyes flickered as a brilliant sky-desolating saber intent was fired, shattering the remaining formations and forbidding auras. A ray of light was emitted from the cracks. With a kick, Qin Nan's figure turned into a beam of light and flew out from it. End of the chapter. Chapter 1151. Meanwhile, on the glowing dojo, the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were astounded. They did not expect Wang Zhanxue to challenge the entire Dragon Emperor Court. Was he doing it on purpose or on purpose? Could it be that the three great factions of the half-god region were planning to humiliate the Middle Continent first, and then trample the Dragon Emperor Court, which was considered the strongest faction of the Middle Continent? That doesn't make sense. The three great factions are here to pick on the factions of the Middle Continent. Why would they pick on the Dragon Emperor Court? Qin Nan is a disciple of the Dragon Emperor Court. If the Dragon Emperor Court is humiliated, Gong Yang's eyes flickered as he spoke, then Qin Nan would surely interfere. Upon having this thought, Gong Yang felt that it was highly possible that the three great factions were trying to force Qin Nan to intervene. Otherwise, why would they waste so much effort? No, I must stop Qin Nan when the time comes. Gong Yang immediately made up his mind. Although he had no idea why the three great factions were trying to force Qin Nan to intervene, according to the mysterious cultivator, the three great factions were here to pick on him. Qin Nan would most likely be in great trouble. Not long after, the people of the Dragon Emperor Court finally collected their thoughts. Challenging the entire Dragon Emperor Court? I'm interested to see how strong you are. Damn it, if I don't avenge senior sister Jiu, I'll never be a beast again. The core disciples, inner disciples, and outer disciples of the Dragon Emperor Court unleashed their murderous intent. Ao Dongfang, Su Qingqing, Hua Jiwudo, Enlin, Xian Yu, Mu Mu, and the rest of the disciples rose from their seats and were about to fly toward the dojo. Calm down, none of you are allowed to attack. This is an order. An imperious roar exploded. This person was none other than the Dragon Emperor. The other martial emperors and elders on the dojo could see that Wang Zhanxue was purposely provoking them. How could the Dragon Emperor not see it? Therefore, Dragon Emperor did not want the disciples of the Dragon Emperor Court to be humiliated. Dean, Wei Ao Dongfang, Xian Yu Mu Mu, and the others trembled. Their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Ha ha ha, what's wrong? Could it be that the people of the Dragon Emperor Court, the number one power in Central State, were all cowards? None of them dared to come up? If that's the case, then forget it. Anyway, I'm already crippled. 2 pieces of trash from the Dragon Emperor clan. Wang Zhanxue burst out laughing at the center of the dojo, without concealing the disdain in his eyes. Dean, let us go. That's right, Dean. This guy is humiliating the entire Dragon Emperor Court. Dean, I know this is his plan, to force us to go up. But Dean, we are the people of the Dragon Emperor Court. Senior sister Jiu and senior brother Yang Qi have both been crippled by him, and he is still trampling on the dignity of the Dragon Emperor Court. If I don't go up now, I'll be drowning in regret for the rest of my life. Ao Dongfang yelled with bloodshot eyes. In addition to him, Xian Yu Mu Mu and the others had the same expression on their faces. You! The Dragon Emperor was slightly startled seeing this. He then took a deep breath and nodded his head, before glancing coldly at Wang Zhanxue and said, "It's fine if you want to fight, but you are not allowed to attack again after winning the battle. You are not allowed to injure your opponent during the battle either. Otherwise, I'll kill you no matter who you are today. Since the Dragon Emperor has spoken, there won't be any problems. He scum, come at me." Wang Zhanxue glanced at the disciples of the Dragon Emperor court with a provocative look. Although the Dragon Emperor had changed the rules and could no longer cripple the disciples of the Dragon Emperor court, it did not affect the plan too much. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that instant 10 piercing sounds could be heard at the same time. Ao Dongfang, Xian Yu, Mu Mu, Su Qingqing, Enlin, Hua Jiwudo, and 4 other inner disciples turned into rays of light and arrived in front of Wang Zhanxue at a shocking pace. Seeing this, the other disciples of the Dragon Emperor court who had just made their moves halted in their track. After all, Wang Zhanxue was fighting 10 people on his own. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples let out sighs in their hearts. Although they were furious, there was nothing they could do. After all, with Wang Zhanxue's strength, no one in the entire Middle Continent would stand a chance against him. The disciples of the Dragon Emperor court would be like moths to a flame. The duel begins, the black-eyed martial monarch calmly said. Bang! At that instant, Ao Dongfang, Xian Yu, Hua Jiwudo, Su Qingqing, and the others emitted a brilliant glow, as 9 giant beasts appeared in the air, unleashing a boundless beastly aura in all directions, as if 10,000 beasts had appeared. As for Mu Mu, a thin sword with the appearance of a white mist appeared in her hand. A merciless aura burst out from her body, as if she were a merciless swordsman in a world of ice and snow. She then unleashed a shocking merciless sword intent and slashed forward. The old man in the purple golden robe and the others remained calm seeing this. Instead, their faces were filled with disdain, as in their opinion, Wang Zhanxue could easily defeat these 10 people. Since the rules have changed, let's change the way we do it. Humiliate the disciples of the Dragon Emperor court. The mysterious young man smirked and transmitted his voice to Wang Zhanxue. On the dojo, Wang Zhanxue's eyes emitted a bloody glow after hearing the words, as a shocking aura burst out from his body. Even though he was facing 10 inner disciples of the Dragon Emperor court, his aura was on par with theirs, or even slightly stronger. Do you think you're strong just because there are 10 of you? Scum, take a good look, blood flames soaring into the sky. Wang Zhanxue clapped his hands together and performed a magical hand seal. In an instant, blood-red flames burst out from the void. Each of the flames transformed into a flame general. In the blink of an eye, there were over 1,000 of them. These flame generals spread out and formed a huge formation with hundreds of them attacking the 10 people at the same time. Roar! Ao Dongfang and the others who were floating in the air executed their natal monarch art. From afar, it looked like 9 ancient suns rising above the dojo, resulting in a blinding sight. Meanwhile, Mu Mu charged into the formation, killing 1 person with each slash at an incredible speed. In addition to that, the 10 cultivators swiftly cooperated and executed their monarch arts while dealing with the blood flame generals, aiming at Wang Zhanxue from 10 different directions, causing Wang Zhanxue to be surrounded by murderous intent, leaving him nowhere to run. According to Senior's words, if I were to humiliate you, it would be meaningless to humiliate one of you. If I were to humiliate you, I would have to humiliate all of you at once. Wang Zhanxue wore a hideous grin as he performed another hand seal. Blood sword of the heavens and earth. A series of explosions took place on his body, as countless crimson glows were emitted from his body, which transformed into giant crimson swords that sprang forward like a rain of swords. End of chapter. Chapter 1152. Ao Dongfang and his crew swiftly retaliated by swinging their tails or slapping with their claws, shattering the blood swords into pieces. However, when they saw the talisman that was left behind after the swords were shattered, their expressions changed instantly. Crap! They had been tricked. Blood God's talisman, instant teleportation strike. With a flicker, Wang Zhanxue arrived before Ao Dongfang within the blink of an eye and lashed out a few hundred bloody fists at the dragon's head. Following this, another talisman was ignited as Wang Zhanxue's figure teleported in front of Su Qingqing and lashed out a few hundred bloody fists at her. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Wang Zhanxue's figure appeared before Hua Jiwudo, Enlin, Xianyu, Mu Mu, and the others. Before they could react, the bloody fist struck their figures mercilessly, sending them flying. The Dragon Emperor on the dojo clenched his fists tightly upon seeing this. The other martial monarchs, elders, and disciples let out sighs in their hearts. The difference between Ao Dongfang's group and Wang Zhanxue's strength was too huge. There was no way they could stand a chance against him. Daluo blood net. Wang Zhanxue opened his mouth and spat out mouthfuls of blood, which exploded into a bloody mist. Following this, the bloody mist combined into a terrifying giant net that encapsulated Ao Dongfang and the others and dragged them backward. At that instant, Ao Dongfang and the others were dragged toward Wang Zhanxue. Blood essence clones. 9 drops of thicker blood were spat out from Wang Zhanxue's body, which transformed into 9 human figures, each with the same appearance as Wang Zhanxue. The crowd was confused after seeing this. It was obvious that Wang Zhanxue was going to win the battle. Why was he summoning 9 clones now? Following this, Wang Zhanxue and his clones spread out and flew above Ao Dongfang and the others. Following this, the eyes of Wang Zhanxue and his clones flickered as they raised their legs and stomped on the claws of Ao Dongfang and the others and Mu Mu's palms without mercy. Bang bang bang! A series of explosions took place as Ao Dongfang, Mu Mu, and the others cried out in pain. As the saying went, the fingers were connected to the heart. Wang Zhanxue's stomp had shattered their bones. How could they not feel the pain? The Dragon Emperor rose from his seat. His eyes emitted a strong murderous intent. Now, he finally understood why Wang Zhanxue had created 9 clones. He wanted to torture Ao Dongfang and the others at the same time. Dragon Emperor, you were the one who set the rules. They have only shattered their bones, which is still 100,000 miles away from being crippled. You can't interfere with their lives. If they can't stand it, they can surrender. The black-eyed martial monarch calmly said. At first, it was the hands and legs, but in the end, it turned into the bones all over their bodies. At that instant, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. The crowd stared at Ao Dongfang, Xianyu, Mu Mu, and the others whose faces were twisted in pain, and their hearts began to tremble for some reason. Their souls were filled with complicated emotions. The 10 of them. They were defending the dignity of the Dragon Emperor Court and the Middle Continent in a seemingly stupid way. However, at that instant at the Dragon Emperor Court, a beam of light was flying toward the glowing dojo at a shocking pace. The figure was none other than Qin Nan. Qin Nan immediately realized that something was not right. Normally, the monarch ascending ceremony should be lively, but why was it so quiet now? Qin Nan immediately scanned the dojo with his left eye of the divine god of battle. Following this, he saw an unfamiliar man with a ferocious expression stomping down on the chests of Ao Dongfang and the others, shattering their bones into pieces. While stomping down on their chests, the unfamiliar man was still uttering something. On the other hand, although Ao Dongfang and the others were covered in blood with twisted faces, they still clenched their teeth with unwillingness in their eyes. Qin Nan was stunned. A few breaths later, a great flame of fury rose in his chest as his body emitted a terrifying murderous intent. How dare they humiliate the people of the Dragon Emperor Court? How bold! End of chapter. Chapter 1153. Bang! At that instant, a terrifying saber-intent burst out from Qin Nan's body. From afar, it looked like an ancient meteorite descending from the sky and flying toward the dojo. However, at that instant, two powerful auras sprang out from the glowing dojo and charged in Qin Nan's direction. A loud roar echoed in Qin Nan's mind. "Qin Nan, stop it!" The one yelling was none other than Gong Yang. Gong Yang immediately flew out from the glowing dojo together with Sima Kong after being aware of Qin Nan's aura. "Brother Yang." Qin Nan halted in his tracks. He did not expect to stumble into Gong Yang here. Wasn't he the leader of the Blood Scorpion at the desolated battleground? Why would he be here all of a sudden? Qin Nan, long story short, the half-god region and the three great factions have purposely humiliated the Middle Continent and the Dragon Emperor Court to force you to intervene. You can't go there, or else you'll be in great trouble. Gong Yang snapped with a stern expression. Even though he did not feel comfortable seeing the Middle Continent being humiliated, in comparison, Gong Yang was more concerned about Qin Nan. He did not want Qin Nan to be in any danger. Cough cough. Sima Kong let out a cough and glanced into the sky, as if it had nothing to do with him. The three great factions of the half-god region are trying to humiliate the Middle Continent and the Dragon Emperor Court? Qin Nan squinted his eyes as a terrifying crimson glow was emitted deep inside his eyes. The three great factions of the half-god region were none other than the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the Martial Principal Sect. If they were purposely trying to humiliate the Middle Continent and the Dragon Emperor Court to force him to intervene, they were most likely from the South Heaven Sacred Ground, as the other two factions did not have any conflict with him. When Gong Yang saw this, he knew something was wrong. He was most familiar with Qin Nan's personality, thus he knew that once Qin Nan made up his mind, he would not back off even if the situation before him was disastrous. "Qin Nan, he's right, you can't go there. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." An imperious voice suddenly appeared in the minds of Qin Nan, Gong Yang and Sima Kong. The voice belonged to none other than the Dragon Emperor's voice. It was obvious that he was aware of Qin Nan's presence, thus he purposely came to stop him. Now that the Dragon Emperor Court had been humiliated countless times, he would not want to see Qin Nan falling into the enemy's trap, which would result in a great danger. After all, the God-Beast had given the order to no longer protect Qin Nan. If anything were to happen, even the Dragon Emperor and the others would not be able to help Qin Nan even if they wanted to. In addition to that, in the Dragon Empress, as soon as the voice was heard, an ancient, imperious voice appeared in Qin Nan's mind. "Qin Nan, you can't interfere this time. I'm aware that the one setting the Dragon Emperor Court up is Xing Tianjing from the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the guy with 3 martial spirits who fought against you last time. He's trying to force you to show yourself. You should know that once the fact that you've surpassed the rules of cultivation is exposed to the public, it will only bring you endless danger. Therefore, now is not the time." The voice was none other than the Martial Serendipity Pavilion. The reason why Qin Nan could not find the Martial Serendipity Pavilion previously was that it had been investigating the 3 great factions recently. It soon discovered that Xing Tianjing was using the 3 great factions to humiliate the Dragon Emperor Court and force Qin Nan to show himself. "Xing Tianjing? Force me to show myself? Expose me to the public?" Qin Nan fell into a deep silence. He did not expect Xing Tianjing to be the culprit. Seeing Qin Nan fall silent, Gong Yang immediately advised, "Qin Nan, Senior Dragon Emperor is right. You shouldn't go this time. You should know that a little impatience will spoil the great plan. You can deal with them when your cultivation has improved. It won't be too late for you to avenge yourself." Sima Kong wore an awkward expression hearing this, but he did not say anything in consideration of Gong Yang's reputation. Either way, it all depended on Qin Nan's decision. That being said, Gong Yang, Sima Kong, and the Dragon Emperor had no idea that the martial Serendipity Pavilion had already transmitted its voice to Qin Nan. Chief Brother Yang. Qin Nan, who had remained silent for quite some time, suddenly spoke. Gong Yang, Sima Kong, and the Dragon Emperor on the glowing dojo were stunned. I'm sorry. Qin Nan raised his head. His calm eyes were engulfed in a terrifying flame. It was the flame of fury. I know it's all part of their plan. I also know the consequences if I were to go up there. I also know that if I were to endure it, I would be able to get my revenge in the future. But I can't. I don't care who it is, as long as they dare to harm my friends, brothers, and family, I will make them pay with their blood. If I don't go now, I'm afraid I will never be able to raise my head again. Qin Nan's eyes flickered with determination. Without hesitation, he went past Gong Yang and Sima Kong and headed straight to the dojo. That was him. Danger? Forbearance? He could not do any of those. He only knew that those people deserved to die. This guy, Gong Yang, was slightly lost, before he let out a wry smile. As expected, this time. Again, he was unable to persuade him. It's fine, just let him go. Damn it, I've been annoyed by those assholes for a long time. Let Qin Nan teach them a lesson. As for what trouble they have caused, it's not the time to think about it. There's always a way out, don't you agree? Sima Kong wore an excited look. He was actually supportive of Qin Nan's decision. This was a real cultivator, a real man. The Dragon Emperor, who was standing on the glowing dojo, was slightly stunned. He had a strong urge to stop Qin Nan, but the look in Qin Nan's eyes was the same as the look in Ao Dongfang's and the others' eyes. He was too touched to speak. Meanwhile, on the glowing dojo, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. Wang Zhanxue continued to stomp on them. However, his brows were starting to furrow slightly. He had already crushed hundreds of their bones, yet this group of people still didn't show any signs of yielding. What should he do? If they continued to refuse to surrender, their will would most likely influence the rest of the cultivators. Kill them! At that instant, a calm voice appeared in Wang Zhanxue's mind. The person was none other than the mysterious young man whom the elders and disciples of the three great factions were extremely respectful toward, who was none other than Xing Tianjing, who possessed three martial spirits. Xing Tianjing had lost his patience when he saw the person who had surpassed the rules of cultivation was still nowhere to be seen. He decided to kill them all. Acknowledged. Wang Zhanxue's face glistened as his eyes emitted a tremendous crimson glow. An eerie crimson sword burst out from his feet and stomped in the direction of Ao Dongfang, Mu Mu, and the others. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were dumbfounded as their eyes widened. The reason being that they did not expect Wang Zhanxue to kill them at that instant. Was this Wang Zhanxue out of his mind? Crap! The Dragon Emperor was startled. He had lost his focus for a brief moment. Now that Wang Zhanxue had made his move all of a sudden, it was too late for him to stop it. Was he going to watch Mu Mu and the others being stomped to death? All of a sudden, at this very moment, a voice rang out. It was as if time had frozen on the glowing dojo. Bang! Following a loud explosion, a terrifying saber glow appeared out of nowhere and slashed at Wang Zhanxue and his 9 clones. The saber glow was too quick, too sharp, and too ferocious. Wang Zhanxue's expression changed tremendously. He quickly withdrew his leg and backed away. An icy voice exploded on the dojo. Are you trying to kill them? End of chapter. Chapter 1154. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads to look at him. They could only see Qin Nan floating in the air, glancing down at the crowd. His hair danced wildly while his eyes emitted a red glow. The terrifying murderous aura emitting from his figure sent chills down the spines of the crowd. The martial monarchs were the first to react. Their eyes flickered with astonishment. Wasn't that Qin Nan? Was he finally going to make his move? Unlike the martial monarchs, Dao Qianzhong, Fang Chongqing, the Celestials, the Faceless Hermit, and the geniuses who had witnessed Qin Nan's brilliance in the third stage and the first stage of the monarch ranking had their eyes filled with hope. Qin Nan! Qin Nan is here! Ha ha ha! Qin Nan is finally here! Scum of the half-god region, your days are numbered. You've infuriated Qin Nan. I would like to see if you can still be so smug. These geniuses were no longer in a bad mood. Their faces were brimming with excitement. Some of them had witnessed Qin Nan unleashing 5 martial trees with the heaven-shattering saber, while others had witnessed Qin Nan defeating the geniuses with 9 martial trees. With Qin Nan's strength, he could easily defeat the geniuses of the half-god region. The remaining elders and disciples of the Middle Continent were astounded. Even though they had heard that Qin Nan's strength was immeasurable and that they should not mess with him, they did not expect the geniuses of the Middle Continent to lose their minds as soon as Qin Nan showed up. The elders and disciples of the 3 great factions of the half-god region wore disdainful looks. Judging from the reaction of the crowd, this Qin Nan's cultivation was most likely outstanding. However, it did not make any difference. Wang Zhanxue was the senior's subordinate, thus he could easily deal with Qin Nan. Qin Nan? Such an ordinary name. Are you the one who has surpassed the rules of cultivation? I hope the Yin and Yang Taoist is right. Otherwise, I'm going to be very angry. Behind the disciples of the South Heaven's sacred ground, Xing Tianjing's eyes flickered as he mumbled to himself. The 3 great factions. There was no need for him to be here when the factions wanted to trample on the dignity of the Middle Continent. However, he had come in person as the Yin and Yang Taoist had predicted that the 4th person who had surpassed the rules of cultivation was currently in the Dragon Emperor court. Therefore, he would need to use some tricks to lure the person here. As such, Xing Tianjing had purposely tagged along and sent Wang Zhanxue to humiliate the Dragon Emperor clan. Senior brother. The eyes of Ao Dongfang and the others who were lying on the ground flickered as they used all their might to speak. I'm sorry. We're useless. On behalf of the Dragon Emperor court, we've embarrassed. Qin Nan's heart skipped a beat. Ao Dongfang and the others had suffered greatly. You didn't embarrass yourself. You've done a great job. Don't worry, leave the rest to me. Qin Nan said in a soft tone. He waved his hand and fired a formidable saber intent, shattering the blood web encapsulating Ao Dongfang and the others. The remaining sword intent encapsulated their figures and flew toward the elders of the Dragon Emperor court. Who are you? You've broken the rules. The black-eyed martial monarch said with a frown. Don't worry, Senior Black-eyed, I've had enough of those 10 scum. Since there's someone who's somewhat interesting, I'll let him have a duel with me. Wang Zhanxue licked his lips and said in a provoking tone, Qin Nan, right? I did mention that I'll fight 10 of them on my own. You can pick another 9 disciples of the Dragon Emperor court. On the dojo, Dao Qianzhong and the rest of the geniuses were stunned hearing this. Wang Zhanxue was asking Qin Nan to pick another 9 disciples? Sima Kong, I've missed out on a lot of things. Tell me everything that happened here. Qin Nan transmitted his voice to Sima Kong without glancing at Wang Zhanxue. All right, I'll start with the sudden arrival of the 3 great factions at the Monarch Horoscope ceremony. Sima Kong spoke at a rapid pace and in a clear manner. In just a few breaths' time, he had explained everything that had happened, allowing Qin Nan to feel as if he had been there himself, experiencing everything that had happened. The sudden arrival of the 3 great factions at the Monarch Horoscope ceremony. They had announced the arrival of the 3 geniuses who had surpassed the rules of cultivation, and they had changed the rules of recruiting disciples. Following this, under the black-eyed martial monarch's suggestion, the 3 great factions, The geniuses of the Middle Continent and the geniuses of the Middle Continent fought one another. First, Dao Qianzhong and the others were defeated, then Fang Chongqing and the others were defeated. Wang Zhanxue had beaten Jiu Jiu and Yang Qi until they were half crippled, which infuriated the Dragon Emperor court. Following this, the scene that Qin Nan had witnessed before was Wang Zhanxue torturing Ao Dongfang and the others. Scum of the Middle Continent? Beat Jiu Jiu until she was half crippled. Qin Nan's chest heaved heavily. He didn't expect that so many things had happened while he was away. Furthermore, the entire Middle Continent and the Dragon Emperor court had been humiliated more than once. What do you mean? Not picking your opponent? Do you really think a scum like you can defeat me on your own? I'm telling you, don't be in a rush to admit your defeat. Wang Zhanxue raised his eyebrows and said in a mocking tone when he saw Qin Nan still standing there. Dao Qianzhong and the rest of the geniuses were not in a rush. The elders and disciples of the Middle Continent frowned. They had never witnessed Qin Nan's strength, thus they were still doubtful of Qin Nan's strength. Would he give up halfway after showing off his strength? Wang Zhanxue. Qin Nan finally spoke all of a sudden. I'll pay you back 100-fold for what you've done. However, not only you, but all the geniuses of the half-god region, listen up. Today, I'm representing the Dragon Emperor court and the cultivators of the Middle Continent to challenge all the geniuses of the three factions. I alone am more than enough to deal with ants like you. Every word was like a heavy clap of thunder. However, that was not the end of it. After saying this, Qin Nan's lips suddenly curled upward as a murderous aura burst out from his body. It's a duel of life and death, regardless of the outcome. At that instant, the spacious dojo fell into a dead silence. Apart from the Dragon Emperor, Dao Qianzhong, Fang Chongqing, and the others who were still immersed in astonishment, the rest of the crowd stared with their eyes open wide, filled with disbelief. Was this a joke? Qin Nan was challenging all the geniuses of the half-god region on his own? A duel of life and death? Was he out of his mind? End of chapter. Chapter 1155. F K me. F K me. It's here. It's here. Challenging all the geniuses of the three great factions on his own. How F King Imperious is that? That's what a real man is like. Did you see that? He's my F King brother, my F King brother. Sima Kong seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. He was so excited that his face was flushed red, and he danced in front of Gong Yang. Gong Yang was left speechless. So he's your brother, but not mine? However, Gong Yang's heart shuddered as he glanced at the center of the dojo and the imperious Qin Nan. Even though he did not agree with Qin Nan's way of doing things, for some reason, Qin Nan was too imperious at the moment, causing his blood to boil and his heart to race. He even felt a sense of admiration toward him. Unlike the two of them, the elders and disciples of the three great factions finally collected their thoughts after a few breaths of silence. They burst into deafening laughter. Ha ha ha! Challenging all of us on his own? Hee hee, this is so funny, I've never seen anyone who's so suicidal. Haha, is the Dragon Emperor clan so desperate that they have no choice but to send this idiot here? He's so full of himself, he doesn't know how to spell the word death. The eyes of the elders and disciples were filled with disdain and disdain. Even though Qin Nan was quite strong, they were all geniuses of the God ranking, and their rankings on the God ranking were considered below average. Even the exceptional geniuses in the top 20 of the God ranking would not dare to challenge all of them. Very well, bold and imposing, I like it, but I do hope that you have some real strength too. Xing Tianjing's lips curled upward. His interest was piqued. On the dojo, apart from Dao Qianzhong and his crew, the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were startled hearing the mocking laughter of the people of the three great factions. They knew that Qin Nan was strong, but there was no reason for him to challenge all the geniuses of the three great factions, right? Wasn't he trying to get himself killed? How could this Qin Nan be so ridiculous? This guy. The Dragon Emperor on the spectator's stand was startled. In his mind, Qin Nan was a courageous person, but he had never seen him before. However, didn't Qin Nan only have 2 martial ancestor trees? 2 martial trees alone was not enough to challenge all the geniuses here, right? Trying to challenge all of us? How reckless! I'll tell you that I alone am enough to deal with a piece of trash like you. Blood God! Wang Zhanshua's eyes were filled with disdain, as he was too lazy to waste any more words. With a kick, a bloody aura burst into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the bloody aura transformed into a giant illusionary figure over 10 zhang tall. It emitted a boundless suppression, causing the entire sky to be dyed red, as if it had killed countless people and dyed the sky red with fresh blood. Its aura was extremely terrifying. His attack was stronger than the Blood God seal and the others he had used before. The reason why he had done so was to defeat Qin Nan in one go. Divine Battle Trees, unleash! Qin Nan stomped his foot and summoned 4 divine battle trees without hesitation, which sprang into the sky and suppressed the giant illusionary figure. Bang! A deafening blast took place. The will of the divine god of battle and the will of monarch arts surged downward, shattering the giant illusionary figure with brute force. The remaining force landed on Wang Zhanshua's figure like a huge mountain, causing his figure to sink into the ground of the dojo. The smiles on the faces of the elders and disciples of the half-god region froze, which were replaced with great astonishment. In addition to them, apart from Dao Qianzhong and the others, the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were astounded. 4 rare phenomenon martial trees. Qin Nan had 4 rare phenomenon martial trees. Qin Nan was also a genius who had surpassed the rules of cultivation. How was this possible? Whoosh! Qin Nan did not stop there. He immediately flew above Wang Zhanshua and clenched his left hand into a fist. The tip of his fist was emitted with the will of destruction as he threw a punch at Wang Zhanshua's chest. Wang Zhanshua's eyes widened as he instinctively executed his technique, causing his chest to emit layers of blood-red light. However, the next moment, the blood-red light was completely shattered as the punch landed mercilessly on his chest. Bang! Along with the loud sound, a series of cracking sounds could be heard. Wang Zhanshua's face twisted as he let out a cry of agony. This punch is for the Dragon Emperor Court. Qin Nan's eyes turned cold as he threw another punch. This punch is for Senior Sister Jiao. Amid the sound of bones breaking, the impact of the punch, and Wang Zhanshua's cries of agony, Qin Nan did not stop there. He continued to attack as the will of destruction on his fist transformed into the intent of the heaven-shattering saber. This punch is for Mu Mu. This punch is for Ao Dongfang. This punch is for Su Qingqing. This punch is for... Punch after punch from Wang Zhanshua's chest to his entire body, smashing down madly, creating countless afterimages of fists. The fist intent on the tip of Qin Nan's fist continued to switch between the will of destruction, the saber intent of the heaven-shattering saber, and the saber intent of the sky-desolating saber. Wang Zhanshua's body was covered in blood, with wounds of various sizes. His cries of agony felt like they were going to shatter the heavens. The reason being that not only were his bones shattered, the will of destruction, the saber intent of the heaven-shattering saber, and the boundless saber intent of the sky-desolating saber penetrated deep into his body, shattering his flesh, bones, meridians, organs, dantian, and even his martial tree. When Qin Nan's final punch landed, Wang Zhanshua was completely crippled. He couldn't be any more crippled. Meanwhile, apart from Wang Zhanshua's cries of agony, the entire dojo was dead silent. The reason being that Qin Nan's punches were too quick, like a storm. It had only taken him 8 breaths' time to finish the punch. I won't kill you today, but I want you to continue living in this world. I want you to suffer for the rest of your life, so you can learn one thing. The cultivators of the Middle Continent are not to be trifled with, and the cultivators of the Dragon Emperor Court are even worse. Qin Nan uttered coldly as he lashed out a kick, sending Wang Zhanshue's figure flying. Following this, Qin Nan turned around and glanced at the elders and disciples of the 3 great factions. Who's next? Bang! The 4 divine battle trees behind Qin Nan unleashed a tremendous battle intent. It was as if they were trying to trigger Qin Nan's emotions, as they uttered a roar toward the elders and geniuses of the 3 great factions. End of chapter. Chapter 1156. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples collected their thoughts at that instant. Gasp! 4 martial trees. My God! Qin Nan has 4 martial trees. No wonder senior brother told me that even Shi Qinfan is no match against Qin Nan. Holy crap! Qin Nan has surpassed the rules of cultivation too? A series of astounded voices could be heard. The reason being that they had yet to calm their thoughts. Even though Xing Tianjing and the others from the half-god region had surpassed the rules of cultivation, they could still accept it. However, it was different for Qin Nan. Qin Nan was only a cultivator from the Eastern Continent. What kind of place was the Eastern Continent? In the eyes of the cultivators of the Middle Continent, the Eastern Continent was like a desolated place that they would not even want to visit. On the other hand, the elders and disciples of the 3 great factions felt like they had been slapped countless times in the face, causing their faces to burn. The reason being that they had mocked Qin Nan before. They had never treated Qin Nan seriously. But now? If they were to compare, the difference between them and Qin Nan was like the difference between the heavens and earth. Ha! 4 martial trees. Qin Nan, you've surpassed the rules of cultivation by having 4 martial trees. Most importantly, you're not a martial monarch yet. Unlike the people of the 3 great factions, Xing Tianjing's heart was filled with great joy. At the beginning, he only wanted to know who had surpassed the rules of cultivation in the Middle Continent. However, he now had an even crazier thought. If he knew how Qin Nan had surpassed the rules of cultivation, wouldn't it mean that apart from his 3 martial spirits, he could also improve his cultivation to surpass the rules of cultivation too? If it worked, he would have surpassed the rules of cultivation in 2 aspects, reaching an unbelievable level. He would surely become the top genius of the Kanglan continent. Even the Empress from 8,000 years ago would be no match for him. What is it? Why are you all silent? Weren't you all scornful before? Could it be that he was scared now? It doesn't matter. Everything I said before is still valid. All of you can come at me together. Let's fight to the death. Qin Nan walked toward the people of the 3 great factions, 1 step at a time. His eyes were sharp like sabers, and his aura was magnificent. This, the elders and disciples of the 3 great powers. They were all intimidated by this imposing aura, and for a moment no one answered. However, as these people were from the 3 great factions of the half-god region, they were quite knowledgeable, thus they soon collected their thoughts. Humph, Qin Nan, I have to admit that you are very strong. In a one-on-one fight, no one is your match. However, you're too full of yourself. You only have 4 martial trees, not enough to make you undefeatable. Do you really think you can challenge all of us on your own? Dream on. The purple-robed old man said with a gloomy expression, Everyone, listen to me. We 3 disciples will form a group. 1 group at a time, we can wear him to death. Hearing this, the geniuses of the 3 great factions were startled. Their eyes were engulfed in flames once again. That's right, the elder was right. Qin Nan had only surpassed the rules of cultivation and had 4 martial trees. He was not undefeatable, thus they still had a chance to defeat him. Everyone knew that there were more than 20 disciples on the scene. They could easily defeat Qin Nan if they were to take turns fighting Qin Nan in groups of 3. I'll do it. Qin Nan. Stop being so full of yourself. I'll show you what it means to be a genius of the God ranking. Humph. Don't think you're undefeatable just because you've surpassed the rules of cultivation. At that instant, following 3 roars, a disciple from each of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and Martial Principle Sect sprang into the sky with a different aura, charging in Qin Nan's direction. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were startled. They subconsciously clenched their fists. There was no doubt that Qin Nan's strength was outstanding, but if the disciples of the half-god region were to take turns fighting him, the outcome of the battle would be difficult to predict. 3 at once? Do whatever you want. The outcome will be the same anyway. Qin Nan's figure sprang forward with an expressionless face. Bang! The 4 rare phenomenon martial trees of the divine god of battle charged toward the 3 disciples like 4 magnificent mountains. To everyone's surprise, the 3 disciples suddenly wore eerie grins as their figures vanished into thin air. Following this, their figures appeared around Qin Nan and surrounded him. They executed terrifying attacks aiming at Qin Nan's figure. As it turned out, the figure that they had rushed over was just a bait. Qin Nan's expression remained the same. A black glow was unleashed from his body, encapsulating the surroundings. Bang! 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 A series of explosions took place. The entire destruction domain was covered in cracks, but it did not shatter into pieces. It managed to resist the attacks with brute force. The eyes of the 3 disciples were filled with astonishment. What kind of monarch art was that, to be able to resist the attacks of the 3 of them at the same time? Break! Qin Nan snapped as the 4 martial trees turned around and struck the chests of the 3 disciples. Following a loud crash and a cry of agony, the 3 disciples were sent flying and slammed into the edge of the dojo. Their bodies were covered in blood. The attacks had shattered their bones, meridians, etc., leaving them half-crippled. We can't give him any time to recover. Everyone, keep going. The old purple-robed man and the other 2 elders collected their thoughts and yelled. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Another 3 disciples flew out from the 3 factions. However, unlike the previous group, they immediately floated in 3 directions around Qin Nan. Each of them was extremely far away from Qin Nan. The 3 disciples communicated with each other with their divine sense, and made up their mind. They surrounded Qin Nan rapidly while performing hand seals to execute long-range monarch arts aiming at Qin Nan. This placed Qin Nan in a difficult situation. If he were to focus on any one of them, he would be attacked by the other 2 factions. Trying to increase the distance between us? Qin Nan let out a hollow laugh. Following a whoosh, his figure turned into a blurry shadow, and arrived beside one of the disciples in less than a breath's time, like a demon descending from the heavens. The disciple stared with his eyes open wide in astonishment. However, before he could finish, the 4 martial trees descended from the sky and struck his chest, sending him flying. The other 2 disciples were startled as a great sense of danger rose in their hearts. However, Qin Nan's figure was like a phantom or a golden-winged giant pung. No matter how hard they tried to escape, Qin Nan followed them like a shadow. In the end, Qin Nan took hold of the opportunity and unleashed the divine battle trees, shattering the monarch arts and landing on their figures. Keep it up! Qin Nan came to a stop and said calmly with his hands behind him. End of chapter. Chapter 1157. How is this possible? The elders and disciples of the 3 great factions were startled. Even though Qin Nan had 4 martial trees, it only meant that the power of his martial ancestor was extremely overwhelming. However, The pitch-black domain that Qin Nan had executed and his current speed were both terrifying monarch art. This Qin Nan did not only have 4 martial trees as his trump card. What are you waiting for? Keep going, he's only a native of the Middle Continent. He doesn't have many powerful monarch arts left. The old man in the purple golden robe and the other 2 elders yelled. 3 more geniuses flew out from the 3 great factions. The 3 geniuses were well aware of how terrifying the destructive power of the 4 martial trees were. Furthermore, Qin Nan was protected by a powerful monarch art, thus it would be difficult to break through his defense, not to mention his outstanding speed. As such, they immediately communicated with their divine sense and executed an ancient monarch art, which emitted a glow encapsulating Qin Nan. It was a monarch art called the 10-layered illusion. They assumed that only the illusion would be able to trap Qin Nan, preventing Qin Nan from fully utilizing his strength. It worked. Seeing that the 10-layered illusions remained still even after 5 breaths, the faces of the 3 disciples flickered with joy. They swiftly closed in on the illusions and performed hand seals, preparing to launch a powerful attack to destroy the illusions along with them. However, at that instant, following a loud crash, 4 divine battle trees flew out from the illusion and struck the 3 disciples at a shocking pace. Qin Nan remained expressionless as his hair danced wildly. His left eye emitted a faint purple glow as he stepped forward. Apart from being sent flying by the impact, the 3 disciples did not realize that using the illusion against the left eye of the divine god of battle was no different than committing suicide. Keep going. Green veins surfaced on the foreheads of the 3 elders as they clenched their fists tightly and uttered roars. 3 rays sprang into the sky from the 3 great factions. The battle took place once again. A series of explosions took place on the dojo. Time passed. After 3,000 breaths of time had passed, a terrifying saber chi descended, and 3 more disciples were seriously injured. It wasn't just the disciples from the 3 great powers. The elders, disciples, and even the people of the Middle Continent could not help but inhale deeply. Up until now, Qin Nan had defeated 16 disciples in total. In the 8 battles, apart from the destructive power of the 4 martial trees, Qin Nan had also displayed other outstanding abilities, such as Qin Nan's speed, Qin Nan's eye technique, Qin Nan's saber intent, and Qin Nan's mysterious left arm and the right arm that was able to threaten artifacts. Any one of the moves that Qin Nan had executed would be considered a terrifying killing blow, the trump card of some disciples. This is what a real genius is like. Not only has his cultivation surpassed the rules of cultivation, he's extremely powerful in other aspects too. It feels like he's an insurmountable mountain. An older martial monarch could not help but murmur. The reason being that he could faintly sense an undefeatable aura from Qin Nan's body. Qin Nan landed on the ground. His forehead was covered in a layer of sweat. His breathing was a lot heavier than before, but his gaze remained sharp as he glanced at the 3 great factions. He did not speak, but his intention was very clear. Send more people to fight him. That's not right, he only has 4 martial trees. His strength is at most equivalent to 7 martial ancestors at their peak. He has already experienced the battle at the dojo and executed so many powerful monarch art. The energy in his body must be depleted, like an arrow at its end. If that's the case. The eyes of the old man in the purple robe flickered sinisterly. Everyone, listen up, Qin Nan is already at his limit. He doesn't have much energy left. Let's catch him off guard and attack together with our strongest moves to send Qin Nan to hell. The other 2 elders were startled when they heard the words. Their eyes flickered as they nodded heavily and gave their orders to their disciples. The plan would surely work. What is it? Qin Nan raised his brows. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples frowned. What were the 3 great factions waiting for? Were they scared? However, at that instant, Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A series of piercing sounds could be heard. Apart from Xing Tianjing, 17 disciples of the three great factions were left. Unexpectedly, they both rose into the sky at the same time, erupting with an incomparably powerful aura. The hand seals in their hands were also continuously forming, fluctuating with waves of terrifying aura. Shameless! What are they trying to do? How bold of them! The martial monarchs on the dojo immediately collected their thoughts and rose to their feet while unleashing formidable monarch auras. The others were infuriated too. They did not expect the three great factions to play such a trick. Ha! How are we being shameless? Qin Nan already said that he would challenge all the disciples of the three great factions on his own. 17 of us are not breaking the rules. The old man in the purple robe and the others burst out laughing. The martial monarchs and the others were even more infuriated hearing this. These people of the three great factions were too shameless. Even though Qin Nan had mentioned that the disciples of the three great factions should challenge him at once, the people of the three great factions did not agree to it and insisted that they should take turns in groups of 3. Wasn't it shameless for them to suddenly change their minds? They could not let the three great factions get away with their scheme. The black-eyed martial monarch unleashed his monarch aura when he saw the reaction of the martial monarchs. The people of the three great factions had already predicted that the martial monarchs would make their moves, thus they immediately transmitted their voices to the black-eyed martial monarch, asking him to hold the crowd back for 5 breaths' time. Once they were delayed for 5 breaths' time, it would be too late for the martial monarchs to intervene. However, to everyone's surprise, a burst of laughter echoed in the sky. Ha ha ha! The one laughing was none other than Qin Nan. The elders of the three great factions were stunned. The martial monarchs were stunned too. Why was Qin Nan laughing at a time like this? You should have done this from the start. What's the point of fighting in groups of 3? Martial trees, unleash. The smile on Qin Nan's face slowly vanished as he stared at the 17 disciples. Instead of backing off, he dashed forward like an arrow being fired from a bow. Bang! Behind him, 3 more divine battle trees sprang into the sky while emitting a tremendous battle intent. At that instant, a total of 7 divine battle trees swept across the sky like 7 meteorites and landed on top of one another, resulting in a magnificent sight like an ancient godly mountain. End of chapter. Chapter 1158. This. The elder in the purple golden robe and the other 2 elders stared with their eyes open wide. Their breathing came to a stop as their hearts stopped beating. The martial monarchs who were about to make their moves, the black-eyed martial monarch, and the elders and disciples on the dojo felt like their hearts had just been struck by a giant hammer. 7 martial trees? Qin Nan had 7 martial trees? Qin Nan's real cultivation was 7 martial trees? As for the 17 disciples who were charging at Qin Nan, their faces were filled with astonishment. They could not believe what they were seeing. Even so, they still gathered their killing moves and unleashed them at the same time. At that instant, the attacks combined into an ancient torrent that was capable of shattering everything in the world into pieces. Bang! It was accompanied by a heaven-shaking explosion. The 7 divine battle trees soared into the sky and shattered the monarch arts with a terrifying destructive force, resulting in a huge gap. Qin Nan passed through the gap like a godly saber being drawn out from its sheath, charging straight at the 17 disciples. The 17 disciples immediately collected their thoughts due to a strong sense of danger. They instinctively executed their monarch arts in Qin Nan's direction. Left eye of the divine god of battle. Unstoppable step. Destruction domain. Left arm of the divine god of battle. Sky desolating saber art. In the span of a single breath, Qin Nan executed his strongest moves simultaneously. He was like a deity in charge of the situation, dodging the monarch arts. As for the monarch arts that he was unable to dodge, he would resist them with the destruction domain, preventing anything from getting close to him. In addition to that, with his left eye, he was able to observe the movements of the 17 disciples. With the speed of the unstoppable step and the unique characteristics of the left arm of the divine god of battle, he continuously executed the destruction fists and the sky-desolating saber art. Bang bang bang! In just a few dozen breaths of time, tens of thousands of explosions rang out. One disciple after another was struck by the powerful attacks, leaving half of their bodies crippled. They let out cries of agony as their figures were sent flying, slamming into the dojo not far away. Qin Nan was like an ancient, ferocious beast in human form, crushing everything in his path. At this moment, Qin Nan's mood suddenly changed. Surging, rising steadily, completely exploding. Fight, fight, fight. Ants from the Central State, right? A native of the Central State? Trash from the Dragon Emperor court? Open your eyes wide and see clearly who is the trash and who is the ant. A series of long howls tore through the air. One after another, the disciples were sent flying. This was no longer a battle, but a pure crushing of power. Boom! As the final explosion took place, the last disciple was sent flying and slammed into the dojo in the distance. Qin Nan's figure slowly descended and landed on the ground. The 7 divine battle trees floated behind him with an everlasting aura. The surroundings were in a complete mess, with countless craters and fresh blood splattered across the ground. The corpses of the disciples of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the Martial Principal Sect were lying on the ground, groaning in agony. Including Wang Zhanxue, there were 36 of them. The disciples of the 3 great factions had been wiped out by Qin Nan alone. At that instant, the entire dojo fell into a dead silence. Every martial monarch, elder, and disciple was utterly dumbfounded by the sight before them, as if the scene was imprinted deep inside their souls. The 3 elders of the 3 great forces were trembling, their faces were pale, and they couldn't say a single word. They had lost. Either way, they had lost. 36 disciples of the 3 great factions had been utterly defeated by a mere cultivator of the Middle Continent. This made the 3 elders suddenly realize that they had messed up the mission that the 3 great factions had placed great importance on. In contrast to the 3 great factions, the martial monarchs, elders, and authorities finally collected their thoughts after a while. Ha ha ha! Assholes of the half-god region, go ahead and be full of yourself. Damn it, don't be so full of yourself just because you have some capabilities. Do you see it now? My brother alone is enough to defeat all of you. Sima Kong placed his hands on his waist and burst out laughing with a blushing face. Beside him, Gong Yang could feel his blood boiling with excitement. If it weren't for his excellent self-control, he would have let out a roar just like Sima Kong. We won. Qin Nan won. Ha! The Middle Continent won. Holy crap! 7 martial trees. Qin Nan has 7 martial trees. Do you think the half-god region is impressive? Even the people of the Middle Continent have 7 martial trees. Qin Nan is so imperious. So imperious. This is what a real cultivator is like. Several excited and astounded voices echoed in the dojo. The loud noise almost scattered the clouds within 10,000 li above the dojo. Even the martial monarchs could feel their blood boiling in excitement. The reason being that when the 3 great factions were humiliating the Middle Continent, they were humiliated too. They had been holding back for too long. Qin Nan. As for the Dragon Emperor, Aot Songtian, and the elders and disciples of the Dragon Emperor court, apart from the initial excitement, for some reason, they could feel their noses tingling as their emotions were extremely complicated. After all, this man had protected the dignity of the Dragon Emperor court. Everyone, please be quiet, the duel isn't over yet. Qin Nan calmly spoke all of a sudden. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were startled hearing this, as their eyes were filled with doubts. The duel wasn't over yet? Wasn't the duel already over? Following this, the crowd immediately glanced toward the direction of the South Heaven sacred ground as they became aware of something. Apart from the old man in a purple robe, there was another disciple. However, it didn't seem like there was any reason for the duel to continue, right? With Qin Nan's current strength, he could easily defeat the disciple with a single move. Are you going to take the initiative, or do you need me to invite you up? Qin Nan calmly said without explaining. After waiting for 2 breaths' time, there was no response. The disciple acted like he did not hear it. However, in the crowd's opinion, the disciple was most likely terrified. It seems like you still think I'm unaware of your identity? I would like to see how capable Xing Tianjing, one of the top 3 geniuses of the half-god region with 3 martial spirits who have surpassed the rules of cultivation, is. Following a roar, Qin Nan's figure leapt into the air as a terrifying saber intent burst out from his body, slashing in Xing Tianjing's direction. Since he had already exposed the fact that he had surpassed the rules of cultivation, why not continue the duel? Not only would he defeat the geniuses of the 3 great factions, he would also defeat the so-called genius of the South Heaven sacred ground who had surpassed the rules of cultivation. End of chapter. Chapter 1159. What? That guy is Xing Tianjing? The eyes of the excited martial monarchs, elders, and disciples flickered with astonishment. They did not expect Xing Tianjing from the South Heaven sacred ground, who possessed 3 martial spirits, to be here. Ha ha ha, Qin Nan, you've given me too many surprises today. I must express my gratitude. Xing Tianjing's expression remained the same, facing the formidable saber intent. Instead, he burst out laughing. In the midst of his laughter, he suddenly flung his sleeves and fired a formidable force, shattering the saber intent into pieces. The simple move of flinging his sleeves and shattering the saber intent was enough to show how terrifying Xing Tianjing's control of his strength was. I hope you can bring me a surprise today. Qin Nan wore a calm expression. 7 martial trees sprang into the sky and occupied 7 different directions, suppressing Xing Tianjing's figure. Even though Qin Nan had attacked out of anger, Qin Nan was not stupid. He did not unleash all 9 martial trees. Instead, he unleashed more martial trees as his opponent grew stronger. His blood was boiling due to the battle, thus he hoped that Xing Tianjing would not let him down. Bring you a surprise? Then forget it. My current body is just a substitute. Xing Tianjing remained calm facing the 7 martial trees, showing no sign of battle intent. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples immediately came to a realization upon hearing this. After all, it would be strange if Xing Tianjing's real body was here. Only a substitute? Are you scared? Qin Nan squinted. Scared? Ha! Qin Nan, when the god ranking started the monarch horoscope contest in the half-god region, I've already inherited the monarch horoscope and achieved the martial monarch realm. Even though your 7 martial trees are extremely powerful, the difference between us is like the difference between the heavens and earth. In my eyes, you're not worthy to be my opponent. You're just my prey. Xing Tianjing stared at Qin Nan with his hands behind his back. He raised his head and burst out laughing. His long robe danced in the absence of wind. The aura of an emperor was gradually awakened in his body, as if he was the only one in this world, the true ruler. These were his truest thoughts. Not worthy. Qin Nan's lips curled upward. Hopefully, Xing Tianjing would still dare to say the same thing in the near future. Qin Nan, although I can't give you a surprise, you've exposed the fact that you've surpassed the rules of cultivation. Therefore, your surprise will come soon. I do hope that you can endure it and survive. When the time comes, you'll become my hunter, Xing Tianjing spoke again, but was interrupted in the middle of the sentence. Since you're a substitute, then cut the crap. Qin Nan waved his hand, causing the 7 martial trees in the sky to descend and shatter Xing Tianjing's body into pieces. You dare! The old man in the purple robe and the other 2 elders stared with their eyes open wide. They did not expect Qin Nan to be so ruthless, killing Xing Tianjing's substitute straight away. Dare what? I've already wiped out the disciples of your 3 factions. You 3, if you don't want to die, piss off. Qin Nan stared at the trio coldly. The trio felt a great chill running down their spines seeing this. They did not doubt Qin Nan's words. If they did not leave now, Qin Nan would most likely kill them. However, right at that moment a voice rang out. The black-eyed martial monarch in the sky, the dragon emperor, the extraordinary saber monarch, the fallen demon monarch, and the rest of the martial monarchs suddenly became aware of something. They raised their heads and glanced into the sky. Bang! A terrifying explosion could be heard coming from deep within the rift. The initially clear blue sky was suddenly covered by a huge darkness, causing the entire place to fall into darkness, as if an endless night had descended upon the place. At that instant, 100 zhang tall glowing door appeared from the endless darkness. From the door, a 10 zhang tall illusionary figure emitting a strong monarch aura stepped out. The eyes of the martial monarchs glistened. Greetings, Supreme Elder. The elder of the martial principal sect, a middle-aged man with long hair, was overjoyed when he saw the figure. He immediately brought his fists together and bowed. The middle-aged man was none other than the supreme elder of the martial principal sect, Martial Monarch Jiwu. What? Supreme Elder? Damn! Even the martial principal sect's grand elder was alarmed? What is he trying to do? The elders and disciples on the dojo were astounded. Many of them had been to the half-god region, thus they were familiar with the situation of the 3 great factions. Among the 3 great factions, the Supreme Elder had the greatest authority, followed by the sect leader and the Supreme Elder. The Supreme Elder's cultivation had to be at least at the martial monarch realm, or at least a late-stage martial monarch realm expert. Most importantly, even in the half-god region and the martial principal sect, it was rare to see the Supreme Elder in person. And now, the Supreme Elder of the martial principal sect was here in person. It's great that Qin Nan is here, but trouble is coming too. If I remember correctly, your art of stealing is unparalleled, right? Gong Yang straightened his face and glanced at Sima Kong. Of course, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm the strongest in the world. Sima Kong chuckled. Be prepared, it's only the beginning. Gong Yang took a deep breath and said, It's only the beginning, you mean? Sima Kong was startled, before he raised his head and glanced into the sky as he became aware of something. As he expected, in less than half a breath's time after the Supreme Elder of the martial principal sect, Martial Monarch Jiwu, appeared, 2 glowing doors over a few hundred zhang long floated out from the darkness. 2 formidable monarch auras swept the surroundings from the doors. The 2 monarch auras were on par with Martial Monarch Jiwu's, and their auras were completely different. Is that, the martial monarchs were startled. They were martial monarchs too. Thus they were not as shocked as the elders and disciples when they saw the Supreme Elder. However, they were now aware of something. He could only see a woman wearing a snow-white robe that tightly wrapped her alluring figure slowly walking out from the door on the left. Her entire body was filled with an alluring aura. From the door on the right, an old man wearing a green robe, with a white beard and a pair of sharp eyes like a divine sword, stepped out with large strides. Compared to this lady, his aura was even sharper. They were the Supreme Elder of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground and the Supreme Elder of the South Heavens Sacred Ground. The Supreme Elders of the 3 great factions had arrived. End of chapter. Chapter 1160. Greetings, Supreme Elder. Greetings. The elders of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground and the old man in the purple robe were overjoyed. They immediately bowed as the boulder in their hearts was lifted. Now that the situation had come to this, if the three Supreme Elders were allowed to do it, it would only make the situation worse. However, since the three Supreme Elders were here, it was no longer their concern. What? The three Supreme Elders. F***K The three Grand Elders are all here? The elders and disciples were astounded. However, they immediately collected their thoughts and glanced toward Qin Nan, who was standing at the center of the dojo. Without a doubt, the three Supreme Elders were here because of Qin Nan. As for Qin Nan, his expression remained the same. He had ruined the plan of the three great factions and crippled over 30 disciples. In addition to that, he had exposed the fact that he had surpassed the rules of cultivation, thus it was reasonable for the three Supreme Elders to be here. Martial Monarch Jiwu, Martial Monarch Yuyao, Martial Monarch Nanjian, may I know why the three Supreme Elders have come to the remote Middle Continent? Among the martial monarchs, the Dragon Emperor was the first to speak. Instead of backing off, his tone was a little aggressive. The reason being that the Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs clearly knew that the three Supreme Elders were here for Qin Nan. As the chief of the Dragon Emperor Court, Qin Nan had sacrificed a lot for the Dragon Emperor Court, thus he had no choice but to protect Qin Nan. Dragon Emperor, let's cut to the chase. Qin Nan, under the sect leader's order, once you join the martial principal sect, you will immediately become a core disciple of the sect leader. Your status will be on equal footing with mine, and you will be given unlimited resources. What do you think? Martial Monarch Jiwu glanced at the Dragon Emperor before glancing at Qin Nan. His eyes flickered as he spoke. TSK, what's so good about entering the martial Dao sect? Qin Nan, once you join the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, you will be promoted to the saint immediately, and the three saintesses will be your Dao partners. You might even have a chance to become the disciple of a Supreme Elder of our sect. The beautiful eyes of the Yuyao Empress flashed with disdain as she stared at Qin Nan. She blinked her eyes, casting flirtatious glances at him. If you join the South Heaven Sacred Ground, you'll be treated as a core disciple. You can become the sect leader of the South Heaven Gate. Other than that, you will also receive the blessing of the Southern Heaven Gates, Southern Heaven Qi, which will last for 30 years. Great Monarch Nanjian said calmly, as if everything was under his control. It was obvious that he assumed Qin Nan would not reject the offer from the South Heaven Sacred Ground. Hearing this, the hearts of the elders and disciples were filled with astonishment. They did not expect the three great factions to recruit Qin Nan with such a shocking offer. Take the conditions of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground as an example. The holy maidens of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground were all outstanding beauties, attracting the attention of countless geniuses. Now, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground had directly taken out 3 of them. If this was not mentioned, the fact that they could become the disciples of venerable elders was also extremely shocking. How significant was a Supreme Elder? He was a martial god, one of the strongest experts in the Kanglan continent. Anyone who was able to become a disciple of a martial god would experience a tremendous change in their status. Besides, the offer from the South Heaven Sacred Ground was even more attractive. The South Heaven Gate was the god weapon that had shocked the entire continent since ancient times, the top artifact of the South Heaven Sacred Ground. If he could acquire the South Heaven Qi and use it to cultivate, his cultivation would surely skyrocket to an unimaginable level. That's strange. I can understand why the 3 great factions are trying to recruit Qin Nan, but Qin Nan has yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, and his martial spirit is only 5th grade Tian rank. Even if he has surpassed the rules of cultivation, is there any reason for them to offer such a great offer? A young disciple could not help but murmur to express his doubts. He was not the only one who had the same doubts. There were others who also had the same doubts. The reason why the three great factions are offering such a great offer is because they are curious about how Qin Nan managed to surpass the rules of cultivation. If the same method is used on other disciples, it would bring great benefits to the sect. That being said, it's impossible to use the same method to surpass the rules of cultivation. A martial monarch of the Middle Continent said calmly. The crowd shuddered hearing this, as they immediately realized the reason behind the offer. They also understood why the three great factions were willing to offer such a great offer. A method to surpass the rules of cultivation and a genius with 7 martial trees. It would not be a loss to recruit him. Upon having this thought, the crowd glanced upward. Their gazes toward Qin Nan were filled with a hint of envy. Even though Qin Nan had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, there was no doubt that Qin Nan would soar into the sky if he agreed to any one of the three great factions. Qin Nan, it's a great opportunity for the three great factions to recruit you, but it's also a great risk. If the method to surpass the rules of cultivation is useless to the three great factions, your status will drop significantly. But overall, the opportunity is greater than the risk. The Dragon Emperor transmitted his voice to Qin Nan with a complicated look. The Dragon Emperor was deeply impressed by what Qin Nan had done. Despite that, the Dragon Emperor felt helpless in his heart. Since the God Beast had spoken, Qin Nan would not be allowed to enter the God Beast forbidden ground. Besides, Qin Nan had already exposed the fact that he had 7 martial trees. Once the news was made known to the public, the entire Middle Continent and the half-god region would be immersed in an uproar. Even though Qin Nan's method to surpass the rules of cultivation was impossible to be used on others, many experts would still target Qin Nan, trying to learn the method, or even trying to devour Qin Nan. When that happened, the Dragon Emperor Court would no longer be able to protect Qin Nan. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor still hoped that Qin Nan would join the three great factions. Even if his status would drop, he would at least be protected. I'm not going to the South Heaven sacred ground. Under the crowd's gaze, Qin Nan spoke with an expressionless face. Join the South Heaven sacred ground? Be strengthened by the South Heaven Chi? What a joke. His greatest enemy was the South Heaven Gate. It was only a matter of time before he would shatter the South Heaven Gate. Elder Nanjian's eyes were filled with astonishment. He never thought that Qin Nan would reject such a great offer from the South Heaven sacred ground. Was this guy out of his mind? Senior Jiwu, Senior Jade Lake, I'm sorry. I won't be joining the Martial Principal Sect or the Jade Lake sacred ground either. Qin Nan glanced at Martial Monarch Jiwu and Martial Monarch Yuyao and brought his fists together in an apologetic tone. Qin Nan was extremely polite toward them, as if he was their junior. His attitude toward Elder Nanjian was completely different from his previous attitude toward him. However, when these words entered the ears of everyone present, it was no less shocking than a thunderclap. Qin Nan rejected all the offers? End of chapter. Chapter 1161. At that instant, in addition to the elders and disciples, even the Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs, Martial Monarch Jiwu and Martial Monarch Yuyao, were dumbfounded. No one would have thought it would end up like this. However, Qin Nan's expression remained the same. He had rejected joining the two factions mainly because he believed that not only would it not bring him any benefits, it would also restrict him. Moreover, he keenly caught two suspicious points. Firstly, why would the South Heaven Sacred Ground, the Martial Principal Sect, and the Jade Lake Sacred Ground all have a genius who had surpassed the rules of cultivation? Secondly, why would the three factions team up and announce that they were changing the rules of recruiting disciples? Qin Nan was clueless about the answers to these two questions, but he was sure that the three factions had a common goal, and they would choose to team up when necessary. If Qin Nan were to join the martial principle sect, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, or any of the other factions, what would he do if he was stopped by the people of his own faction when he was about to shatter the South Heaven Gate? Qin Nan was a loyal person. Since the faction treated him like family, he would treat the faction like family too. Therefore, he did not want to restrict himself further. As for the fact that he had surpassed the rules of cultivation, would it bring him endless danger? It was not within Qin Nan's consideration at all. The reason being that he did not want to be protected by a faction. Senior Jiwu, Senior Yuyao, and everyone else, I know you're eager to know how I managed to surpass the rules of cultivation. I swear to the heavens and earth that I'll tell you the truth. Qin Nan let out a calm smile and uttered the shocking words. As expected, Martial Monarch Jiwu, Martial Monarch Yuyao, and the rest of the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were startled upon hearing the words. Did they hear it wrong? Why was Qin Nan willing to tell them the truth? Are you serious? Yuyao Empress asked after a slight hesitation. As the previous martial monarch had mentioned, the reason why the Jade Lake Sacred Ground and the martial principle sect had placed so much importance on Qin Nan was because Qin Nan had surpassed the rules of cultivation. Even though he had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, he still had a chance in 100 years. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The method of Tao Law. Of course it's true. I, Qin Nan, swear to heaven and earth that if there is even the slightest falsehood in what I'm about to say, I will be struck by lightning and my cultivation will collapse. A grin appeared on Qin Nan's face. He had exposed the fact that he had surpassed the martial path rules, which would bring about countless dangers. One of the main reasons was that too many people wanted to know the method he had used to surpass the martial path rules. Even Xing Tianjing probably had such a plan. Since that was the case, he might as well take the initiative to say it. After all, if he wanted to refine the second martial ancestor tree, he would need the force of the divine god of battle as the foundation. In this world, apart from Qin Nan, no one else was able to refine the force of the divine god of battle. That way, it would save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. I once read a book, and it mentioned that you must first have a thought. Why is there only one martial ancestor tree in this world? Why is there only one martial spirit? So I asked myself, why is there only one martial ancestor tree instead of two, or even more? Later on, I found a mysterious force by coincidence. I used the mysterious force as the foundation to refine the martial ancestor tree, which allowed me to surpass the rules of cultivation. Qin Nan explained. Even though it was not much, it served as a shocking thunder in the ears of the crowd. That's right. Why is there only one martial tree? Why can't there be two? Holy crap! He can refine a second martial tree with a different force? So it's that simple. Are you out of your mind? It's obviously extremely dangerous, and the mysterious force is extremely important too. A series of astonished voices echoed on the dojo. The eyes of the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples flickered with excitement. It was obvious that Qin Nan's words had opened a new door for them. That being said, it was not only for them. Once the news was made public, it would open a new door for the cultivators of the Kanglan continent. Cultivator Qin Nan, thanks for your help. If you're willing, the door of the martial principle sect is always open for you. Martial Monarch Jiwu gave Qin Nan a thoughtful look before stepping into the glowing door and disappearing. Hee Qin Nan, you're so interesting. Let's meet again. Martial Monarch Yuyao giggled as her figure shuddered. Following this, she too disappeared. Since he had learned the way to surpass the rules of cultivation, there was no reason for him to stay any longer. After all, Qin Nan had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, and his martial spirit was only 5th grade Tian rank. Not bad, it seems like Qin Nan isn't completely blinded by his anger. Not only will the entire Kanglan continent experience a new trend of cultivation, many people will also give up on trying to recruit Qin Nan. Gong Yang could not help but exclaim. He always knew that Qin Nan was extremely smart. However, the kid could be a little silly at times. Well, well, well. All of a sudden, the word good exploded in the sky. A terrifying monarch aura rippled in the sky like a vast ocean. The person was none other than Martial Monarch Nanjian, who had been silent all this while. Martial Monarch Nanjian wore a dark expression as he pointed at the ground and uttered a thunderous roar. Qin Nan, you dare to cripple 6 disciples of the South Heaven sacred ground. You've committed a great sin. I'll eliminate you right now. Bang! Martial Monarch Nanjian waved his hand and fired a terrifying sword glow. The attack was powerful enough to penetrate the glowing dojo. How bold! Martial Monarch Nanjian, how shameless can you be? Trying to bully others in the Middle Continent. The Dragon Emperor, the Extraordinary Saber Monarch, the Fallen Demon Monarch, and the rest of the martial monarchs stepped forward and unleashed their fury. There was no way they would allow Martial Monarch Nanjian to attack Qin Nan in front of the crowd. As for crippling the 6 disciples of the South Heaven sacred ground, leaving aside the humiliation that the South Heaven sacred ground had inflicted on the Middle Continent and the Dragon Emperor court, the rules of the duel were that it was a duel of life and death. It was already fortunate that Qin Nan did not kill them. Everything was done according to the rules. Martial Monarch Nanjian's expression remained the same as if he had already expected this. He snapped, Dragon Emperor and your fellow martial monarchs, not only did Qin Nan cripple 6 disciples of the South Heaven sacred ground, Qin Nan is also a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate. If you dare to stop him, you will be treated as an enemy of the South Heaven sacred ground. Hearing this, the furious Dragon Emperor and the others stiffened as their eyes were filled with great astonishment. A 3-starred enemy? Qin Nan was a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate? Are you kidding me? End of chapter. Chapter 1162. 3-starred enemy? What's that? Most of the crowd wore blank looks on their faces. From Martial Monarch Nanjian's words, it seemed like this 3-starred enemy was someone that the South Heaven sacred ground had to eliminate, thus it was extremely important. Otherwise, Martial Monarch Nanjian would not be involved in the matter. However, Qin Nan had always been in the Middle Continent. Why would he offend the top treasure of the South Heaven sacred ground, the South Heaven Gate? Qin Nan frowned slightly. Apart from surpassing the rules of cultivation, he had never interacted with the South Heaven Gate before. Besides, the South Heaven Gate was unaware that he was planning to shatter the South Heaven Gate. Why was it targeting him now? Gong Yang, who was among the crowd, immediately transmitted his voice, as if he was aware of Qin Nan's doubts. Qin Nan, trouble is coming. You might not know this, but the South Heaven Gate is able to exist for a long time, not only because of its strength and the number of experts in the South Heaven sacred ground, but also because it possesses 2 kinds of mystical powers. The first power, the South Heaven Gate, is able to predict danger. Whenever there is a threat that is targeting it, it will be able to sense it, causing the gate to emit different glows, which are blue, purple, red, and golden. The blue glow is the second strongest, while the golden glow is the strongest. As for the second power, I have no idea what it is exactly. In simple words, the South Heaven Gate is able to detect cultivators that are hostile to it in the Kanglan continent every once in a while, and categorize the cultivators into 1-starred, 2-starred, 3-starred, 4-starred, and 5-starred. Until now, there has yet to be a 5-starred cultivator, and 4-starred cultivators are extremely rare. 3-starred enemies are extremely rare too. However, if the South Heaven Gate considers someone to be a 3-starred enemy or above, the South Heaven sacred ground will expend a great effort to eliminate them all. Gong Yang spoke rapidly, finishing the explanation in a single breath. Qin Nan's heart shuddered hearing this. He did not expect the South Heaven Gate to possess two powerful abilities, which allowed it to sense the danger and detect the presence of its enemies. All of a sudden, all the doubts in Qin Nan's heart were completely resolved. In the third stage of the Monarch Horoscope Contest, the South Heaven Spirit Envoy was suddenly killed. They must have come under the orders of the Southern Heaven Gate to kill the enemies of the Star Grade. However, at that time, the South Heaven Gate had no idea who the three-starred enemy was. If he knew, he would not need to go through so much trouble just to enter the third stage of the Monarch Horoscope Contest. The reason why the South Heaven Gate has deemed me a three-starred enemy is most likely because I've exposed the fact that I've surpassed the rules of cultivation. Even though I have not become a martial emperor, I have surpassed the rules of martial arts. It is reasonable for me to be a three-star enemy. No wonder Senior Marshal Serendipity Pavilion advised me not to expose myself. A light flashed in Qin Nan's eyes. Although exposing the fact that he had surpassed the martial path laws would attract a lot of attention, the number of people targeting Qin Nan would decrease significantly once they found out that Qin Nan had surpassed the martial path laws. The real danger was that Qin Nan had been targeted by the Southern Heavenly Gate, and had been identified as a three-star enemy. However, Qin Nan did not have the slightest hint of regret in his heart. For the sake of the dignity of the Dragon Emperor Court, for the sake of his friends, it did not matter if he exposed himself. Besides, his goal was to destroy the South Heaven Gate, and since the South Heaven Gate possessed these two terrifying abilities, it was only a matter of time before it discovered Qin Nan's existence, and the South Heaven Sacred Ground would target him. Now, the danger had just arrived. Meanwhile, in the air, the Dragon Emperor and the rest of the martial monarchs wore unpleasant looks. They did not expect Qin Nan to be a three-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate. Everyone knew that there were less than 30 people like him in the entire Kanglan continent. Most importantly, the martial monarchs clearly knew what it meant to be a three-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate. It meant that the South Heaven Sacred Ground would try their best to eliminate the person. In addition to that, since the establishment of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, they had told every faction that no one was allowed to protect a three-starred enemy. Otherwise, it would be considered as an enemy of the South Heaven Sacred Ground. In the past, some factions were not willing to accept the rules, nor were they willing to sacrifice their disciples, thus infuriating the South Heaven Sacred Ground. In the end, they were suppressed by the South Heaven Sacred Ground, resulting in great losses. 5 years ago, the son of a martial monarch was identified as a three-starred enemy by the South Heaven Gate. The martial monarch refused to hand over his son, and refused to join the South Heaven Sacred Ground. Thus the South Heaven Sacred Ground sent out a few martial monarchs, besieging that martial monarch, resulting in the death of that martial monarch. It was obvious how determined the South Heaven Sacred Ground was to eliminate a three-starred enemy and above. Still not moving? Martial Monarch Nanjian snapped coldly. As a matter of fact, under normal circumstances, even if it was a three-starred enemy, there was no need for him, the Supreme Elder, to deal with it himself. However, he had been ordered by the sect leader to eliminate Qin Nan if he did not submit to the South Heaven Sacred Ground. As such, he was utterly shocked when Qin Nan rejected his offer. Under normal circumstances, three-starred enemies would be eliminated right away, without giving them a chance to survive. Only a few people were given a chance by the South Heaven Sacred Ground to join the Southern sect, thus allowing them to be spared from the danger of being killed. The extraordinary Saber Monarch, the fallen Demon Monarch, and the others were hesitant. Was it worth it to offend the South Heaven Sacred Ground for a mere Qin Nan? However, Qin Nan had protected the dignity of the factions of the Middle Continent and brought glory to the Middle Continent. If they were to hand Qin Nan over just like that, wouldn't they be the laughing stock of the world? Martial Monarch Nanjian, even though Qin Nan is a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate, Qin Nan is still a disciple of the Dragon Emperor Court. We can't let you kill him. That being said, if Qin Nan leaves the Dragon Emperor Court, it's none of our business how you want to deal with him. The Dragon Emperor clenched his teeth and said, if it weren't for the God Beast's order to not help Qin Nan, even if Qin Nan was a 3-starred enemy, the South Heaven Sacred Ground would never touch a single hair on Qin Nan. However, he could not disobey the order of the God Beast. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor had no choice but to protect Qin Nan in the Dragon Emperor Court. Martial Monarch Nanjian frowned slightly upon hearing this. Even though the South Heaven Sacred Ground was powerful, they would not declare war against a faction just because of a 3-starred enemy, as it was not worth it. Besides, the Dragon Emperor Court had already compromised. However, at that instant, an imperious voice exploded above the Dragon Emperor clan, as if it had originated from ancient times. Qin Nan is a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven Sacred Ground, thus it is reasonable for the South Heaven Sacred Ground to deal with him. Dragon Emperor and everyone in the Dragon Emperor Court, listen to my orders. Do not interfere or protect Qin Nan. Otherwise, you will be expelled from the Dragon Emperor Court and stripped of your title as a beast. That's all. End of chapter. Chapter 1163. The words left the crowd dumbfounded. As everyone knew, the reason the Dragon Emperor Court was able to become the strongest faction in the Middle Continent was not only because of the Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed Monarch Beast, and the Diabolic Monarch Beast, but because the Dragon Emperor Court was supported by one of the 6 forbidden grounds of the half-god region, the God Beast Forbidden Ground. The God Beast Forbidden Ground was stronger than the 3 great factions in the ancient era. Although it had declined, its strength and resources were only slightly weaker than the 3 great factions, thus it was an unshakable authority. And now, the voice dared to say such words, indicating that it belonged to the legendary God Beast. A martial God realm expert. No way. That won't do. Senior God Beast, Qin Nan has exposed everything for the sake of the Dragon Emperor Court, to save the dignity of the Dragon Emperor Court. How could we betray Qin Nan? The Dragon Emperor was the first to speak. That's right. Senior God Beast. I was only able to achieve the martial monarch realm thanks to Qin Nan's help. Either way, Qin Nan is still a disciple of the Dragon Emperor Court. We won't allow anyone to harm him. Ao Tsongtian stepped forward with a firm attitude. Without Qin Nan, he would never have been able to achieve the martial monarch realm. Senior God Beast. Qin Nan is a disciple of the Dragon Emperor Court. The Dragon Emperor and Senior Brother Tsongtian are right. We won't allow anyone to harm Qin Nan. Senior God Beast. We can't do that. The peak leaders, elders, and disciples of the Dragon Emperor Court blurted out in astonishment. In their hearts, they had already treated Qin Nan as a disciple of the Dragon Emperor Court. Besides, Qin Nan had done too much for the Dragon Emperor Court, thus they could not be ungrateful. What now? You don't even listen to my words? Not only can the Dragon Emperor Court not help Qin Nan, from today onwards, Qin Nan has been expelled from the Dragon Emperor Court, and has nothing to do with the Dragon Emperor Court. The demon god's cold voice exploded in the sky. The Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsongtian, and the peak leaders, elders, and disciples of the Dragon Emperor Court stared with their eyes open wide. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Not only did they not help Qin Nan, they even expelled Qin Nan from the sect? In the next moment, the Yao god's voice did not continue to resound in the sky. Instead, it resounded in the minds of the Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsongtian, and every Yao race disciple. I hope all of you are clear. Qin Nan is no longer of any value to the entire Dragon Emperor Court, the entire demon race. Not only that, Qin Nan is now a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven Gate. If we insist on protecting him, it will surely affect the entire demon race. Have you all forgotten the mission that we, the demon clan, bear? For the sake of the entire demon race, we must expel Qin Nan. If anyone dares to disobey, they will be considered as betraying the demon race. That's all. The 3 sentences exploded in succession. The demon god's voice did not appear after the last 3 sentences. However, the eyes of the Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsangtian, and the rest of the people of the Dragon Emperor court flickered vigorously after hearing the 3 sentences. Their figures even began to tremble slightly. They finally understood the situation. Qin Nan had failed to achieve the martial monarch realm. Qin Nan was someone that the South Heaven Gate wanted to kill. Qin Nan was no longer of any use to them. Therefore, the demon race had decided to abandon Qin Nan. However, Qin Nan had once shown them the beast-hitting stick, trained Ao Tsangtian and his crew, and helped Ao Tsangtian achieve the martial monarch realm. Now, for the sake of the disciples of the Dragon Emperor Court, for the sake of the Dragon Emperor Court's dignity, he had exposed the fact that he had surpassed the rules of cultivation, resulting in countless dangers. Qin Nan had sacrificed so much for the sake of the Dragon Emperor Court, yet they were willing to abandon Qin Nan and expel Qin Nan? Was this what they meant by doing it for the sake of the entire demon race? Ha! Senior Demon God, you're wise indeed. With the Senior Demon God here, it's only a matter of time before the demon race surpasses its former glory. We, the South Heaven Sacred Ground, will accept your kindness today. Martial Monarch Nanjian burst out laughing. He did not expect the demon god to intervene in person. This way, things would be much easier to handle. Qin Nan die. Martial Monarch Nanjian withdrew his smile. His eyes turned cold as he stomped the ground. A shocking sword intent burst out from his body and slashed in Qin Nan's direction. The rest of the martial monarchs were startled seeing this. Following this, they withdrew the monarch force in their bodies as a thought crossed their minds. There was no need for them to hesitate any further. Even the Dragon Emperor Court that Qin Nan was currently in had abandoned the Dragon Emperor Court. Even if they did not interfere, the whole world would be laughing at the Dragon Emperor Court instead of them. Crap. Sima Kong. Get ready. Gong Yang rose from the ground as 9 ancient figures flickered in his eyes. Damn it, a bunch of assholes, what bullshit demon god is this, ungrateful prick. One day, I'm going to empty his nest and cook him. Sima Kong's expression darkened as he cursed while performing a hand seal. All of a sudden, at that instant, Martial Monarch Nanjian. 2 deafening roars exploded in the rift. The Dragon Emperor and Ao Tsangtian were the first to react. 2 terrifying dragon auras surged toward Martial Monarch Nanjian like a vast ocean. Ha ha ha, Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsangtian, what do you want? Are you planning to disobey the demon god's order? Are you planning to be expelled from the beast tribe forever? Martial Monarch Nanjian's expression remained the same, as if he had already expected this. He burst out laughing and uttered a few words of wisdom. The Dragon Emperor and Ao Tsangtian both hesitated for a brief moment. The reason being that since they were young, they were taught to obey the orders of the demon god no matter what happened. As such, the words of the demon god had left a shadow in their hearts. It's time. South Heaven's sword intent. Martial Monarch Nanjian let out a hollow laugh as he fired another sword intent with a thought. The sword intent was like a meteorite descending from the boundless rift. Not only that, it also possessed an ancient aura that caused everything to tremble in fear. In just the blink of an eye, the sword intent had arrived right above Qin Nan's head. No, the faces of the Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsangtian, and the people of the Dragon Emperor Court turned pale. However, it was already too late, as they could no longer react in time. Empty-handed hand, nothing is gone. A blasting roar could be heard. A mystical glow burst out from Sima Kong's figure, which encapsulated Qin Nan's figure, causing Qin Nan's figure to move backward at a faster speed than the South Heaven's sword intent. It was Sima Kong's art of stealing, the fastest in the world when it came to stealing. Trying to escape? Die. Martial Monarch Nanjian's expression remained the same, as his eyes were filled with disdain. Bang! The terrifying South Heaven's sword intent changed its direction slightly as if it had a mind of its own, before slashing in Qin Nan's direction at a shocking speed. This was the power of the South Heaven's sword intent, as it was able to lock onto the target's aura, preventing them from escaping. K me. That goddamned old bastard. Sima Kong's face darkened. Meanwhile, Gong Yang wore a calm expression as he finished performing the hand seal. Qin Nan, who was encapsulated by the mystical glow, withdrew his figure and raised his left and right arms. His left arm was blocking the attack, while his right arm was holding the heaven-shattering saber, which was perfect to nullify the sword intent of the South Heaven sword intent. At that instant, a rare occurrence took place. How bold! A loud roar exploded from above the 9 heavens. A terrifying aura surged down from deep within the rift. Martial Monarch Nanjian and the rest of the martial monarchs were dumbfounded. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. How could this be? How could there be such a terrifying aura? Could it be that a martial god realm expert had interfered? End of chapter. Chapter 1164. You people from the South Heaven's sacred ground are so unreasonable that you can decide someone's life and death for no reason at all. You are utterly disgusting. Do you South Heaven's sacred ground and that stupid gate think you can do whatever you want in the Kanglan continent? You should ask the sword in my hand if it allows it. A terrifying voice exploded in the rift. An illusionary figure appeared in the clouds. His hair danced wildly and his white robe drifted in the wind. His aura was terrifying enough to shatter the heavens and earth. Could it be, you're the magical hair sword god? Martial Monarch Nanjian's expression changed tremendously. His eyes were filled with terror. Magical hair sword god? Could it be the Anti-Heaven Alliance? Anti-Heaven Alliance, Anti-South Heaven, did they make their move? The surrounding martial monarchs were dumbfounded. The Anti-Heaven Alliance was established 5 years ago by the magical hair sword god who had disappeared from the Kanglan continent for 2,000 years. The entire faction kept a low profile. No one knew how many experts it had. The only thing they knew was that the Anti-Heaven Alliance's goal was to oppose the South Heaven Gate and the South Heaven Sacred Ground. Every time the Anti-Heaven Alliance made a move, the South Heaven Sacred Ground would suffer great losses. However, to their surprise, the magical hair sword god of the Anti-Heaven Alliance was willing to make a move for Qin Nan. Break! The white-robed figure with the demonic hair snapped coldly. At that instant, countless sword intents descended from the sky. The sword intents stacked on top of one another and formed a 999 zhang long sword dragon, which roared in Martial Monarch Nanjian's direction. Crap! Run! Martial Monarch Nanjian's face turned slightly pale. Without hesitation, he flung his sleeves and dragged the elders and disciples of the 3 great factions into his sleeves. A powerful sword intent burst out from his body as he disappeared into the rift. Trying to run away? The magical hair white robe sword god harumphed coldly and tore the rift apart before vanishing into thin air. The glowing dojo had only returned to normal after a few breaths' time. The martial monarchs, elders, disciples, and the others were stunned, as if nothing had happened. Anti-Heaven Alliance? Gong Yang frowned slightly. You scared me to death. Sima Kong patted his chest with a lingering fear. Although he hated martial monarch Nanjian, he could not help but admit that the power of the slash was too terrifying. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded in Qin Nan's mind. Qin Nan, you should leave the Dragon Emperor court at once and find a secluded place to hide. I was just imitating the aura of the magical hair sword god of the Anti-Heaven Alliance. It should last for 6 hours. After that, I'm afraid the South Heaven sacred ground will be here again. The voice belonged to the Martial Serendipity Pavilion. So that's where the attack came from. The person was not the legendary magical hair sword god of the Anti-Heaven Alliance, but the Martial Serendipity Pavilion. The reason being that the Martial Serendipity Pavilion had always been in the dark. Apart from Madame Heavenly Fortune, no one was aware of its existence. In order to not be exposed, the Martial Serendipity Pavilion had purposely imitated its appearance to divert the attention. Senior, thank you. Qin Nan's heart was filled with warmth. Even though he, Gong Yang, and Sima Kong had already come up with a plan when Martial Monarch Nanjian made his move, it was still extremely risky. Don't mention it. You should take care of the matters at the Dragon Emperor court. The voice of the Martial Serendipity Pavilion dissipated. It was obvious that it had transformed into the magical hair sword god and left to hunt down Martial Monarch Nanjian. Qin Nan fell silent upon hearing this. He did not regret exposing the fact that he had surpassed the rules of cultivation for the sake of the Dragon Emperor court, thus placing himself in great danger. He was not afraid of the danger at all. However, the god-beast's attitude made his heart turn cold. Even though he could understand that the god-beast had abandoned him as a human since he had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm and had become a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven sacred ground, for some reason, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. The god-beast had treated him well when he was still useful, but had abandoned him when he was no longer needed? Qin Nan, are you all right? Qin Nan, how are you? Qin Nan. On the glowing dojo, the Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsangtian, and the peak leaders, elders, and disciples of the Dragon Emperor court immediately collected their thoughts and went up to Qin Nan. Don't worry, I'm fine. Qin Nan wore a smile and said, however, the South Heaven sacred ground will be here soon, so I'll have to leave soon. Hearing this, the Dragon Emperor, Ao Tsangtian, and the others stiffened. Their expressions kept changing, and there were traces of bitterness spreading from the corners of their mouths. They had no choice but to leave the Dragon Emperor court due to the danger, not to mention that their god-beast was the one who had chased Qin Nan away. Qin Nan. At that instant, the 9-tailed monarch beast, the diabolic monarch beast, Ao Dongfang, Su Qingqing, Hua Jiwudo, Mu Mu, and the others who had just recovered some of their strength flew over from the rift. It was obvious that they had heard the god-beast's voice too. Have you all recovered? That's great, I won't be worried anymore. Seniors, senior brothers, senior sisters, and junior sisters, you don't have to blame yourselves. I know that everyone in the Dragon Emperor court has treated me with sincerity, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Qin Nan said with a sincere expression. He did not hold any grudge against the people of the Dragon Emperor court. On the contrary, the Dragon Emperor and the people of the Dragon Emperor court had dared to oppose the god-beast for his sake, thus he was quite touched by their actions. We, the Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, the diabolic monarch beast, and the others were astounded. Everyone, thank you for taking care of me all this time. In my heart, you have always been my seniors, my fellow disciples. I hope we'll meet again. Qin Nan slowly bowed deeply toward the Dragon Emperor, the 9-tailed monarch beast, the diabolic monarch beast, and the others. A moment later, he rose to his feet and scanned the Dragon Emperor and the others, as if he was trying to remember their faces. In the end, Qin Nan made up his mind and shifted his gaze toward the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples on the dojo, before bringing his fists together. Gong Yang and Sima Kong let out sighs in their hearts. Following this, Qin Nan glanced at them and nodded. The three turned into rays of light and flew into the distance. For some reason, the martial monarchs, elders, and disciples on the dojo had mixed feelings seeing this. The Dragon Emperor, the nine-tailed monarch beast, the diabolic monarch beast, and the others wanted to say something, but no words came out. Ask him to stay? How could they ask him to stay under such circumstances? Leaving the Dragon Emperor court now was most likely the best outcome for Qin Nan. 10,000 beasts. Send him off. The Dragon Emperor uttered a roar all of a sudden. His figure rapidly expanded while emitting a purple glow. Following this, an enormous creature the size of a mountain floated in the air, casting countless shadows across the dojo with a terrifying aura. The hearts of the nine-tailed monarch beast, the diabolic monarch beast, and the others shuddered. Following this, their figures transformed into their true forms and floated in the air, causing the sky to be filled with a few hundred enormous creatures stacked together like an ancient godly mountain. Roar! The Dragon Emperor uttered a roar into the sky, as if he was trying to express the emotions in his heart. Roar! 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 The great demons behind it roared at the sky at the same time, their roars shaking the heavens. The rift above the Dragon Emperor clan within a few thousand li was shattered at that instant. The martial monarchs, elders, and disciples were dumbfounded seeing this. It was something that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. The reason being that they had never seen such a shocking sight before. Qin Nan, who had already flown a distance away, froze in place. A moment later, his lips curled upward. Following this, he took a step forward and disappeared from the crowd's sight together with Gong Yang and Sima Kong. Time trickled by. Over 10,000 beasts stared at the dojo in the sky as if they were frozen. After some time, the nine-tailed monarch beast lowered her gaze and let out a sigh. Chief, did we do the right thing? The Dragon Emperor fell silent for a moment. His eyes were filled with confusion for the first time. End of chapter. Chapter 1165. Following this, the monarch ascending ceremony continued. Ao Tsangtian was given the monarch title of Battle Dragon, Sorceress Qian Qian was given the monarch title of Sorceress, while Tang Qingshan was given the monarch title of Black Saber. Thus they were known as the Battle Dragon Martial Monarch, Sorceress Martial Monarch, and Black Saber Martial Monarch, officially becoming one of the authorities of the Kanglan continent. Normally, the monarch titles would be announced to the world, resulting in countless cultivators exclaiming. However, on this day, no one in the Middle Continent or the Half-God region was paying any attention to the monarch titles, as everyone was immersed in the happenings of the monarch ascending ceremony. Meanwhile, in the Middle Continent, holy crap! Qin Nan has surpassed the rules of cultivation and has 7 martial trees. Gasp! 7 martial trees, how did he do that? Not only Qin Nan, the half-god region, Xing Tianjing from the South Heaven Sacred Ground, Zhuang Tsidao from the Martial Principle Sect, and Su Qingning from the Jade Lake Sacred Ground have all surpassed the rules of cultivation. There are 4 of them now. TSK. I thought it was only a legend to surpass the rules of cultivation, but it turns out to be true. My God, the 3 great factions have changed the rules, allowing someone with a second-grade Tian-ranked martial spirit to join them? That's right, the rules have indeed been changed. The 3 great factions have brought many geniuses of the God ranking to the Middle Continent, but they were all defeated by Qin Nan alone. Defeated by a single person? Holy crap! My blood is boiling just from hearing it. What a surprise! Who would have thought this Qin Nan would be so terrifying? It seems like the geniuses of the Middle Continent are on par with the three great factions. That's right, I don't care how the three great factions change the rules, but I won't join them. That's right. Those three great factions are dreaming if they think they can humiliate the cultivators of the Middle Continent. A series of astonished voices echoed in the Middle Continent. Even though too many things had happened during the monarch ascending ceremony, if it were any other time, any one of them would be enough to shock the entire Middle Continent. However, compared to Qin Nan, the cultivators of the Central Plains paid less attention to the three superpowers and the fact that Xing Jingtian and the other two had surpassed the rules of martial arts. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Much worse. This time, every cultivator and expert was talking about Qin Nan. In the past, Qin Nan's ranking had dropped significantly, allowing him to enter the eyes of the people of the Middle Continent. However, this time, Qin Nan's image in the hearts of the people of the Middle Continent had completely changed. He had become incredibly lofty and brilliant. On the other hand, due to Qin Nan, the three great factions had failed to achieve their desired result by changing the rules of recruitment. Instead, many cultivators and geniuses of the Middle Continent were disdainful of the three great factions, and were determined to stay in the Middle Continent. At the same time, in the Half-God region, when the news regarding the monarch ascending ceremony spread, every cultivator and faction was astounded. What? A genius who has surpassed the rules of martial arts and has 7 martial trees has appeared in such a barren place like the Middle Continent? Yeah, his name is Qin Nan. The three great factions initially planned to send out their disciples of the god ranking to trample the disciples of the Middle Continent, but he defeated them all by himself, completely stealing the limelight of the three great factions. Tisk Tsk, 7 martial trees. Who would have thought that there would be a fourth person who has surpassed the rules of martial arts? Humph, so what if he has surpassed the rules? From what I know, Qin Nan didn't achieve the martial monarch realm in the monarch horoscope contest. What? Qin Nan didn't achieve the martial monarch realm? That's right, not only did he not achieve the martial monarch realm, Qin Nan is also a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven sacred ground. Holy crap? A 3-starred enemy? Tsk, that's such a pity. Not only did he fail to achieve the martial monarch realm, but he's also a 3-starred enemy. He's done for. I've heard that martial monarch Nanjian was involved, but it seemed like the Anti-Heaven Alliance was involved. He didn't manage to kill Qin Nan. So what if he didn't kill him? The next monarch horoscope contest will take at least 100 years. Qin Nan might be able to escape once, but do you think he can do it every time within 100 years? Unlike the disciples of the Middle Continent, the cultivators of the Half-God region were not as shocked, as they already knew that the three great factions had changed the rules of recruiting disciples, and that Xing Tianjing and the others had surpassed the rules of martial arts. However, to their surprise, Qin Nan had also surpassed the rules of martial arts. That being said, after the astonishment, the cultivators of the Half-God region began to treat Qin Nan with disdain. So what if he had surpassed the rules of martial arts? He had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm. Being a 3-starred enemy of the South Heaven sacred ground had already determined Qin Nan's fate. Meanwhile, in the Half-God region, some of the hidden factions, powerful cultivators, and ancient authorities began to have thoughts of making their move. The reason being that they were planning to surpass the rules of martial arts too. After all, Qin Nan was different from Xing Tianjing and the others. Qin Nan had no one to rely on, and had yet to achieve the martial monarch realm, thus he was an easy target. Meanwhile, under the influence of the Dragon Emperor court, the news of how Qin Nan had surpassed the rules of martial arts was spread to every corner of the Middle Continent and the half-god region as if it had grown wings. Look, Qin Nan has told us the way to surpass the rules of martial arts. TSK, doesn't it seem simple? Well, it does make sense too. Qin Nan has sworn an oath to the heavens and earth. I've also deduced that it's the only way to refine a second martial tree. Damn it, 7 martial trees. I want 7 of them too. Let's go and try it out. Spread the word, find all the ancient records of the sect at once. Ask the 5 elders to come back and deduce what kind of force we can use to refine a new martial ancestor martial tree. At that instant, the entire Middle Continent and the half-god region experienced the same frenzy of cultivation. Everyone was trying to surpass the rules of martial arts. The reason being that everyone had the dream of reaching a higher level in their hearts. They had no choice in the past, but now that the method was right in front of them, how could they not give it a try? As such, in the half-god region and the Middle Continent, many cultivators and authorities who were planning to target Qin Nan completely gave up on the thought. After all, now that they knew the way to surpass the rules of martial arts, there was no need to target Qin Nan anymore. That being said, it was worth mentioning that some authorities and secret factions were still interested in Qin Nan. However, Qin Nan had expected it to happen, but there was one thing that Qin Nan did not expect. As he had revealed the method to surpass the rules of cultivation, many cultivators had opened a new door for themselves. As a result, many years later, the martial path of the Kanglan continent had undergone a complete change, leading to a new era of martial arts. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.